Good evening, listeners. Welcome to Noir Intellect. I'm your host, Victor Blackwood. If you enjoy mysteries, hidden clues, and uncovering the truth, don't forget to like and subscribe. And tell me, where in the world are you watching from? Leave it in the comments below. Now, keep your eyes open and your mind sharp. The mystery begins now. Chapter 1. The coat on the empty chair. The trouble began with a chair that no one was using, and a coat that everyone had seen. By the next morning, the chair was still empty, the coat still had no owner, and Harold Whitmore was dead. At 10:23, while Nero Wolfe was upstairs discussing moisture with 10,000 orchids, the telephone rang on my desk. I answered it expecting a client, a creditor, or someone trying to sell us improved insulation. Instead, I got Inspector Kramer. Goodwin, I was when I woke up. Is Whiff there? He owns the building. I need him. You and half the criminals in New York. Kramer breathed into the receiver. It was the kind of breath that usually arrived before a threat. A man named Harold Whitmore was found dead in his study this morning, East 71st Street. I want Wolfe to hear something before he decides. It is none of his business. Who says he will decide that? Experience. What is the something? A coat. I looked at the receiver. You are calling Nero Wolfe about an overcoat? It was hanging on an empty chair all evening. Nobody owned it. That sounds serious. Did it refuse to answer questions? Get Wolfe. He hung up. At 11, Wolfe came down from the plant rooms. He entered the office with a small yellow orchid in one hand, and the expression of a man whose household had failed to arrange the world properly. I told him about Kramer's call. No, he said. You have not heard the details. I have heard enough. A coat has lost its owner. The police have lost their judgment. Neither misfortune concerns me. Harold Whitmore is dead. People die. Kramer thinks the coat matters, Mr. Kramer frequently mistakes irritation for thought. Wolfe placed the orchid on his desk and lowered himself into his chair. Fritz entered with beer, poured it, and withdrew. I waited until Wolfe had taken his first sip. Whitmore owned Whitmore Consolidated, I said. Shipping, construction, and half a dozen companies with names designed to conceal what they do. His estate should be worth several million. Wolfe looked at me over the rim of his glass. You have been reading the financial pages. I was trapped in a barber's chair. Millions do not improve a corpse. No, but they improve the number of people interested in how it became one. The doorbell rang. Kramer had decided not to trust the telephone. He entered the office without removing the cigar from his mouth and sat in the red leather chair as though he intended to punish it. Whitmore was 62, he said. Healthy enough. His secretary found him at 8:10 this morning, sitting behind his desk. No sign of struggle. The medical examiner is not ready to commit himself. Wolfe opened his eyes. And the coat? Kramer removed the cigar. Whitmore gave a dinner last night, 7 guests. After dinner, they moved into the library. A dark coat was hanging over the back of an empty chair near the door. Every guest assumed it belonged to someone else. This morning it was still there. Then it belonged to the dead man. No. His valet says it was not Whitmore's. A servant's? No. A guest's? They all deny it. Then it is either abandoned property or a lie. Kramer's jaw moved. That is why I came. Wolfe leaned back. Who attended? Simon Cole, Whitmore's business partner. Edwin Price, his attorney. Laura Whitmore, his niece. George Talbot, a contractor. Miriam Blake, Whitmore's personal secretary. Daniel Ross, a banker. And Ellen Whitmore, the dead man's wife. A family gathering? Business mixed with family. Whitmore planned to announce something. What? No one agrees. That is promising, I said. Kramer ignored me. The coat is expensive. Dark charcoal wool, no tailor's label, no initials. The pockets are empty except for a brass token. What kind of token? Wolfe asked. Round. Number 27 stamped on one side. Railway? No. Club? We do not know. Photograph it. Kramer took one from his pocket and placed it on Wolfe's desk. The token was slightly larger than a quarter, with a hole near the edge. One side carried the number 27. The other showed 3 small lines inside a square. Wolfe studied it, then pushed the photograph toward me. Archie, you will visit the Whitmore residence. Kramer looked pleased for the first time. I thought the coat was none of your business, I said. It is not, Mr. Kramer's confusion has become mildly entertaining. The Whitmore house stood on East 71st Street, behind black iron railings and a front door polished enough to reflect gilt. A patrolman admitted Kramer and me. The entrance hall was wide, pale, and quiet. A marble staircase rose at the rear. Miriam Blake waited near the drawing room. She was around 35, composed, dark-haired, and dressed in grey. Her face looked tired but not fragile. "I found him," she said before Kramer asked. "In the study?" I said. "Yes, Mr. Whitmore asked me to arrive early. He wanted letters typed before a board meeting." "What time did you leave last night?" 10:40. "Was he alive then?" "Yes. He was in the library with Mr. Cole and Mr. Price." "Did you see the coat?" She looked toward the library door. "Yes, whose was it?" "I assumed it belonged to Mr. Talbot." "Why he arrived late, and I did not see him remove a coat," Kramer said. "Talbot says he gave his coat to the valet. Then I was mistaken. The library was long, warm, and built to convince visitors that books were a form of property." Shelves reached the ceiling. A fire had burned low in the grate. Near the door stood a row of chairs. The empty chair was walnut with a green leather seat. The dark coat hung over its back. It was beautifully made. Heavy charcoal wool, silk lining, black buttons, and a collar that had been brushed recently. The shoulders were broad, but not unusually so. The sleeves were long. It could have belonged to any well-dressed man between 40 and 60. Or to someone who wanted us to think so. I did not touch it. The police photographer had already finished, and a laboratory man stood nearby. "Any prints?" I asked. "Several partials, mostly on the buttons. Nothing useful yet. Hair, thread, dust. We are collecting everything." The chair stood directly beside the library door. Anyone entering or leaving would have passed within a foot of it. From the main seating area, the coat looked like the back of a man leaning forward. That was its first useful quality. "Where did everyone sit?" I asked. Miriam Blake showed us. Harold Whitmore had occupied a large chair near the fireplace. His wife sat on a sofa beside Laura. Simon Cole and Edwin Price took chairs near a small writing table. Daniel Ross stood most of the time. Talbot remained close to the drinks cabinet. Miriam had moved between the library and dining room. "And the empty chair?" I asked. "No one used it." "Why?" "The coat was there. Who noticed it first?" she thought. "Mrs. Whitmore, I believe. She asked whose it was." "What happened?" "Mr. Cole said it was not his." Mr. Price said the same. Mr. Talbot laughed and said perhaps an eighth guest had arrived without introducing himself. "Did Whitmore react?" Her eyes shifted. "Yes." "How?" He stared at the coat. Then he asked the valet who had brought it. "And?" "The valet did not know. Did Whitmore touch it?" "No. He told everyone to leave it alone." "That was better." "Why?" "He said the owner would claim it." "Did he seem frightened?" Miriam took a moment. "Not frightened." "Angry? Did he recognize it?" "I cannot say." Kramer asked about Whitmore's announcement. Miriam looked toward the study. He planned to change the structure of his company. Mr. Cole expected to be made chairman. Mr. Talbot expected a major construction contract. Mr. Ross believed Whitmore would approve a large loan. Laura thought he might discuss the family trust. And Mrs. Whitmore? She knew he intended to revise his will. Kramer grunted. We entered the study. Harold Whitmore's body had been removed, but the room still carried the shape of his death. His chair stood behind a wide desk. A glass of water remained on a side table, marked for laboratory examination. Papers lay in neat stacks. Nothing appeared disturbed. The desk drawers had been opened by the police. One held business files. Another contained personal letters, a checkbook, and a small revolver that had not been fired. On the blotter lay a folded sheet of paper. "What is that?" I asked. Kramer handed me a photograph of it. The original had already been bagged. The sheet contained a single handwritten sentence. "The amble chair has been filled." No signature. "Found under Whitmore's hand," Kramer said. "Did the writing match anything in the house?" "Not yet." "Was it written before or after he died?" The ink was dry. I looked at the empty chair visible through the open study door. From Whitmore's desk, he could have seen part of the coat hanging in the library. "Who entered the study last night?" I asked. "Everyone denies it except Whitmore," Kramer said. "That makes the room crowded." We returned to the library. Simon Cole was waiting for us. He was 50, broad through the chest, with silver hair and the confidence of a man accustomed to correcting waiters. His dark suit was expensive. His temper was less carefully made. "This is outrageous," he said. "We have answered the same questions 3 times. That is how the police learn which answer changes," I told him. He disliked me immediately, which saved time. Cole admitted arguing with Whitmore after dinner. Whitmore had accused him of concealing losses in a shipping venture. Cole claimed the accusation was false. "Did he threaten to remove you from the company?" I asked. "He threatened everyone." "Did he recognize the coat?" "I do not know." "You watched him look at it." "I watched him become irritated." "Was it your coat?" "No." "Did you touch it?" "No." "Where were you at 10:30? In the library with Whitmore and Price. Until 10:50. Then I left." "Together?" "No, Price remained." That contradicted Miriam Blake, who said she left Whitmore with both men at 10:40 but did not know who departed first. Edwin Price was quieter. He was thin, nearly 60, and had the dry manner of an attorney who charged for pauses. He said Whitmore planned to change his will. Ellen Whitmore would receive the house and an income. Laura would control a family trust. Simon Cole would lose voting authority in the company. "Who gained?" I asked. Whitmore had not signed the final documents. "Who knew that?" "His wife, his niece, Mr. Cole and I." "Did you recognize the coat?" "No." "The token?" "No." "Did Whitmore?" Price adjusted one cuff. "He may have. What makes you say that?" "He asked me whether I had seen the symbol before. The 3 lines in the square, yes." "What did you tell him?" "That I had not." "Was that true?" Price met my eyes. "Yes." Laura Whitmore entered before we finished. She was 28, fair-haired, and controlled in the way young people become controlled when wealthy relatives have trained them to wait for permission. "My uncle had enemies," she said. "You should not assume one of us killed him." "I have not assumed anything except that no one owns the coat." She looked at it. "He knew who did." "Why?" "Because when he saw the brass token, he went pale." That was the first time anyone used the word pale. "What did he say?" "He said, 'Not here.'" "To whom?" "To the coat." Kramer stared at her. "You are certain?" "Yes." "Did anyone else hear?" "Mr. Ross was beside me." Daniel Ross confirmed it. He was a careful man in his 40s, with a banker's habit of making every sentence sound secured. Whitmore said, "Not here," Ross told us. Then he told the valet to close the library doors. "What happened next?" I asked. Nothing. That was the strange part. He continued the evening as though the coat did not exist. "Did he make his announcement?" "No." "He postponed it." "Why?" He said the necessary person had failed to arrive. The coat had occupied a chair. Whitmore had expected someone. The expected person had not officially appeared. "I telephoned Wolfe from the hall," he answered, after Fritz transferred the call from the office. "Well?" "The coat sat beside the library door all evening." Whitmore recognized the brass token, or its symbol. When he saw it, he said, "Not here." He expected an additional person and postponed his announcement when that person did not arrive. "Did the coat resemble a seated figure?" "Yes. From across the room it could pass for one." "Was the chair visible from the study?" "Partly." "Who first claimed the coat lacked an owner?" "Everyone, eventually." "Unsatisfactory." "Learn who placed it on the chair." "No one saw." "Then learn who had the opportunity." He hung up. Opportunity was plentiful. The guests arrived between 7 and 8. The valet collected their outer garments in the front hall. The library remained empty during dinner. Servants entered twice to tend the fire and carry coffee. Any guest could have slipped away for a minute. I spoke with the valet, Peter Nash. He was 60, narrow-faced, and insulted by the suggestion that an unknown coat had passed through his hall. "I took every guest's coat personally," he said. "Did you take that one?" "No." "Was it in the library before dinner?" "I did not see it." "Who entered the library during dinner?" "Mr. Whitmore once." "Mr. Price once." "Miss Blake twice." "Mr. Talbot went looking for a telephone." "Did anyone use the side entrance?" "The caterer's men." "Any unexpected visitor?" Nash hesitated. "A man came at 9:15. There it was." "What man?" "He gave no name. He said Mr. Whitmore expected him." "Description?" "Tall dark hat, scarf across his mouth." "He carried no coat?" "No." I telephoned the dining room. "Mr. Whitmore told me to send him away." "What happened?" "He left." "Did anyone see him leave?" "The doorman opened the door." The doorman remembered the visitor, but could add little. The man entered from the rain without an overcoat, which was unusual. He stayed less than 3 minutes. When he departed, he crossed the street and disappeared behind a taxi. No one saw him carry the dark coat. At 5:15, Kramer received a preliminary report. Harold Whitmore had not died of heart failure. His blood contained a strong sedative and another substance still being identified. The glass in his study held only water. The poison had entered by some other means. I looked again at the coat. The laboratory man had turned back the right cuff. Along the inner seam was a faint brown stain. "What is that?" I asked. "We will test it." The left inside pocket, previously believed empty, had a small cut in its lining. Something flat had been hidden there and removed. The coat was not merely unclaimed. It had been used. Kramer ordered it taken to the laboratory. As the technician lifted it from the chair, something metallic clicked against the floor. A second brass token rolled beneath the writing table. I retrieved it with a pencil. It also carried the symbol of 3 lines inside a square. But the number was different. The token from the pocket was 27. The one hidden in the coat lining was 31. Kramer looked at me. 2 numbers. 2 chairs, perhaps. There is only 1 empty chair. Last night there may have been 2. I returned to West 35th Street at 6:40. Wolfe was in the office, reading a book about cultivated mushrooms. He marked his place with 1 finger while I reported. When I finished, he closed the book. "The coat was not worn into the house," he said. "That is my conclusion. It was brought earlier and placed during dinner. Probably. The unknown visitor arrived without a coat because he was not the coat's owner. His appearance caused Whitmore to refuse him entry, but it also confirmed that the object in the library had delivered its message." "The brass token?" "Yes. 2 tokens, 1 exposed, 1 concealed." Whitmore recognized the first symbol. Someone later searched the coat and removed an object from the lining, but overlooked the second token. Whitmore, perhaps. What was the coat for? Wolfe's lips pushed forward. It gave an absent man a place at the gathering, an invisible guest. No, a visible absence. That was a Wolfe sentence, and he knew it. The telephone rang. It was Kramer. "The brown stain inside the cuff is blood," he said. "Human blood. Not Whitmore's type." I repeated it to Wolfe. His eyes narrowed. A coat belonging to no one had sat untouched through dinner. It carried 2 numbered tokens, another man's blood, and an empty hiding place in its lining. Harold Whitmore had recognized it, spoken to it, and postponed an announcement because someone had failed to arrive. By morning he was dead. The chair had been empty all evening. The coat had not. Chapter 2. The night of the gathering. A coat may enter a house in several ways. It can arrive on a guest, over a servant's arm, inside a parcel, or through a window if its owner has a taste for exercise. The dark coat at Harold Whitmore's dinner had apparently managed without any of them. At 9:20 the next morning, Inspector Kramer telephoned to inform me that his original guest list had been compiled by a patrolman, whose chief talent was speed rather than accuracy. The principal guests were Richard Barnes, Samuel Price, Clara Morgan and Peter Lawson, he said. Whitmore's wife was in the house, but she was not part of the business dinner. What happened to the other names? They belonged to employees, visitors from earlier in the day, and 1 man who left before dinner. That is comforting. For a while, I thought Whitmore had hosted 2 parties in the same library. Get to the house. We are reconstructing the evening. Wolfe prefers reconstruction after breakfast. I am not asking Wolfe. That explains the lack of manners. Kramer disconnected. Wolfe was upstairs with the orchids, so I left word with Fritz and took a taxi to East 71st Street. The morning had turned cold. New York pedestrians moved with their shoulders raised, as though the city had increased its prices overnight. The Whitmore residence had acquired 2 policemen, 4 reporters, and a flower delivery addressed to the widow. The reporters asked whether Nero Wolfe had solved the murder. I told them Wolfe had solved breakfast and was considering lunch. Inside, Kramer stood in the entrance hall with Sergeant Pearlie Stebbins. The hall clock said 10 minutes to 10. Kramer's face said it had been a longer morning. The medical examiner confirmed poison, he said. A sedative in Whitmore's blood and a concentrated plant toxin. We are still checking the exact combination. How did it enter? Not through the water in the study. Food? Possible. Drink during dinner? Also possible. Coat? Kramer glanced toward the library. The blood in the cuff belongs to a man, type B. Whitmore was type A. Any name for the coat? No label, no marks, no tailor willing to claim it yet. The wool is expensive. The lining was replaced recently. And the cut pocket? Something flat was hidden there, about 3 inches by 5. A photograph, or a document, or a small sandwich. Kramer did not appreciate the range of possibilities. The household staff had been assembled in the morning room. Peter Nash, the valet, sat straight-backed near the window. Miriam Blake, Whitmore's secretary, had arrived to assist the police. Beside them were the cook, 2 maids, a chauffeur, and a young footman named Owen Clark. Kramer wanted the evening reconstructed minute by minute. I wanted to know when the coat first appeared. Peter Nash insisted that it was already hanging on the library chair when he entered the room at 6:15 to inspect the fire. "Why did you not remove it?" I asked. "I assumed it belonged to Mr. Whitmore." "You told us yesterday it did not. I learned that later. At 6:15 I had no reason to examine it." "Was Miss Whitmore in the library?" "No." "Who had been?" Nash looked toward Miriam Blake. "Miss Blake worked there during the afternoon." Miriam shook her head. "I left the library at 5:40. The chair was empty. That gave the coat a 35-minute window. The first dinner guest, Clara Morgan, arrived at 6:45. Richard Barnes came at 6:53. Samuel Price at 7:05, and Peter Lawson at 7:12. The coat had arrived before all of them. Wolfe would like that. "What happened between 5:40 and 6:15? I asked. The staff began offering pieces. The maid had carried fresh flowers to the drawing room at 5:50. The cook remained below stairs. The footman polished silver in the dining room. Nash assisted Whitmore in changing for dinner from 5:30 until 6. The chauffeur returned the car to the garage at 5:55. Miriam Blake had been in the study with correspondence until 6:10. "Who entered through the front door?" I asked. "No one," Nash said. "The side door? Several deliveries," the cook replied. "Wine, fish, flowers, and ice." The Whitmore house had a service entrance opening into a narrow passage beside the kitchen. From there, stairs led to the dining room floor. A person carrying a folded coat could reach the library without passing the main hall, provided the person knew which door to use. "Who supervised the deliveries?" I asked. "Owen," Nash said. The young footman swallowed. "I checked them," he said. "Nothing unusual." List them he did. A wine merchant's driver came at 5:20. A fish delivery arrived 10 minutes later. A florist came shortly before 6. An ice company worker arrived at 6:05. Names? He knew the regular drivers, but not the florist. The florist had been a substitute, tall, wearing a brown work coat and cap. Did he carry flowers? A large box. Where did he take it? To the drawing room. Did you remain with him? For most of the time. Most? I went to get scissors. How long were you gone? Less than a minute. That was enough time to remove a folded coat from beneath flowers and place it on a library chair. Kramer sent Pearlie to trace the florist. I asked Owen whether the man had seemed familiar with the house. "He did not ask where the drawing room was," Owen said. "Did that surprise you? I thought he had delivered here before." "Could you identify him?" "Maybe. The flower box was found in the pantry. It had come from a legitimate shop, but the shop denied sending a delivery to the Whitmore residence that afternoon. Someone had taken one of its boxes and filled it with ordinary white chrysanthemums purchased elsewhere. The coat had not walked into the house. It had come disguised as flowers. Kramer looked pleased and angry at the same time. "Early access," I said. "Someone arranged the delivery before the guests arrived. Or one of the guests hired the florist. Or someone inside the house did." We moved into the library. Without the coat, the green leather chair looked smaller and less important. The police had marked its position on the carpet. From the doorway, anyone entering the room would see it immediately. From Whitmore's place near the fireplace, the coat would resemble a man sitting with his back partly turned. Kramer had asked the 4 principal guests to return. Richard Barnes arrived first. He was 54, broad, smooth-faced, and dressed as if his tailor had been warned against imagination. Whitmore had made him a partner 15 years earlier. According to company records, Barnes expected to become chairman when Whitmore retired. Samuel Price came next. He was a thin attorney with steel grey hair and the habit of touching his cuffs before answering questions. Clara Morgan was a handsome woman in her late 40s. She had known Whitmore since childhood and served on the board of a family charity. She wore black but did not behave like a mourner. Peter Lawson arrived last. He was 42, narrow-shouldered, with careful eyes and a voice that sounded as though every word required approval from an accountant. Kramer seated them where they had sat during the gathering. Ellen Whitmore entered from the hall and remained near the fireplace. She was younger than her husband by nearly 20 years, composed and distant. Since she lived in the house, Kramer did not count her among the arriving guests, but she had been present throughout dinner. I stood near the empty chair. "Mrs. Whitmore," I said, "when did you first see the coat?" She looked at the chair. "Shortly before dinner." "Exactly when?" "About 7 to 20. I entered the library with Clara. Clara Morgan nodded. "It was already there." "What did you think?" "That it belonged to Richard," Clara said. Barnes frowned. "Why me? You wear dark coats. So does every man in New York with an undertaker." Samuel Price said. "I assumed it belonged to Lawson." Lawson gave him a cold glance. "Mine was in the front hall." "Did anyone ask the servants before dinner?" I said. "No," Ellen replied. "It seemed unimportant." "At what point did it become important?" "When Harold saw it." That occurred at 8:40 after dinner, when the guests moved into the library. Whitmore entered last. He had been speaking privately with Miriam Blake in the dining room. According to everyone present, he crossed the library threshold, saw the coat, and stopped. "How long?" I asked. Barnes said, "A second." Clara said, "Longer." Lawson said, "Long enough for us to notice." Samuel Price said nothing. Whitmore walked to the chair, but did not touch the coat. He looked at the brass token hanging partly from the right pocket. The token numbered 27 had been visible. The token numbered 31 remained hidden inside the cut lining. Then Whitmore said, "Not here." He spoke toward the coat. I asked. "Yes," Clara said. Barnes shook his head. "It's better." He spoke to himself. "No." He asked Nash, who had brought it. Nash denied knowledge. Whitmore then told everyone to leave the coat untouched and ordered the library doors closed. "What happened next?" Kramer asked. Barnes looked irritated. "We discussed business." "Which business?" "Whitmore's planned announcement." "What was he going to announce?" Barnes hesitated. Ellen Whitmore answered for him. "Harold intended to dissolve his partnership with Richard." Barnes turned toward her. "That had not been decided." "He told me it had." Kramer looked at Barnes. "Motive improves." Barnes rose halfway from his chair. "Whitmore had accused me of irregular accounting. The accusation was false." Peter Lawson spoke quietly. "It was not entirely false." Barnes turned on him. "Be careful." Lawson folded his hands. "Whitmore found unexplained losses in 2 shipping accounts. You advised on those accounts, reported the losses. You created the reports. Kramer cut them off." Samuel Price admitted that Whitmore planned to revise several company agreements and his will. Barnes would lose voting control. Ellen would receive income, but no authority over the business. Clara Morgan would become trustee of a charitable foundation. Peter Lawson would be asked to conduct a full financial review. "And who benefited most?" I asked. Price considered the question. "No one immediately. Whitmore intended to retain control." "That sounds like him," Clara said. I turned to her. "Why were you invited?" "Harold wanted me to oversee the foundation." "Did you know about the coat?" "No." "The tokens?" "No." "Had you seen the symbol of 3 lines in a square?" Her expression remained steady, but one hand moved against her skirt. "I may have seen it years ago." "Where?" "I do not remember." That meant she remembered perfectly and disliked the memory. I asked Samuel Price the same question. He repeated his denial from the day before. Peter Lawson examined the photograph before answering. "It resembles an old storage company mark," he said. Kramer leaned forward. "Which company?" "I cannot recall the name." "You handle Whitmore's finances and cannot recall a company mark." "It may have been connected with a warehouse account," Barnes said. "Whitmore owned warehouses all over the city." "Numbered 27 and 31, I asked. Lawson's eyes moved toward the empty chair. "Possibly locker numbers." That gave the tokens a practical use. I telephoned Wolfe from the morning room and reported the corrected guest list, the false flower delivery, and the new timeline. The coat entered between 5:40 and 6:15, I said. It was probably hidden in a florist's box and placed by a man who knew the house. All guests arrived later. Then the visible guest list is misleading, Wolfe said. That has happened before. The person who arranged the coat need not have attended dinner. He may have hired the false florist, or used disguise himself. What did the coat communicate? Whitmore recognized token 27. Lawson thinks the symbol belonged to a storage company. Find it. Kramer is tracing the florist. Mr. Kramer pursues the hand. You pursue the meaning. What about the blood in the cuff? A message may be genuine, or it may be composed from stolen facts. Identify the man whose blood it was. That should be simple. There are only several million men with type B blood. Begin with those connected to numbered storage spaces. He hung up. When I returned to the library, Clara Morgan was standing near the empty chair. You remembered the symbol, I said. She did not deny it this time. Harold and I saw it when we were young, she said. Where? An old private club our fathers used. It was not a social club. Businessmen rented rooms and storage compartments there. Name, the Trident Exchange. 3 lines in a square. Yes. Does it still exist? I thought it closed 20 years ago. Where was it? Near the river, on West 22nd Street. What were the numbered tokens for? Private cabinets. Members used numbers instead of names. Was Harold a member? His father was. Harold may have continued. Number 27? She looked at me. That was his father's number. And 31? I do not know. She was lying about that one. Before I could press her, Kramer entered with news from Pearlie. The false florist's description matched a former Whitmore employee named Arthur Dale. Dale had worked as a warehouse supervisor until 6 months earlier, when Whitmore dismissed him for theft. Dale was tall, knew the house, and had type B blood. That was fast, I said. Kramer ignored the compliment. Dale had disappeared after his dismissal. His last known address was a furnished room near the waterfront. A warrant search 6 months earlier had found nothing stolen. Was he connected to the Trident Exchange? I asked. Kramer looked at me. What exchange? Clara Morgan answered reluctantly. Kramer sent another man to West 22nd Street. The Trident Exchange still existed, though not under that name. Its building had become a private storage facility. The old numbered cabinets remained in the basement. Cabinet 27 had been rented for decades by a Whitmore family company. Cabinet 31 was registered to Arthur Dale. That connected the coat, the tokens, and the blood. It did not explain why Whitmore had been poisoned. Dale placed the coat, Kramer said. His blood was on it. He sent Whitmore a warning and came to the house at 9:15. Without an overcoat, I said. He had already left it in the library. No. The coat was too expensive for Dale, and the shoulders were broader than his description. Also, why arrive at the front door after sneaking in earlier? To confront Whitmore, then why accept being sent away? Kramer glared. Because he planned to return. Or because he only needed Whitmore to know he was alive. We searched the library again. The chair's green leather back had a small scratch near the top. The coat's second button carried a faint trace of varnish, matching the chair. Someone had pressed the coat firmly into position, shaping it to resemble a seated figure. Beneath the chair, the laboratory man found a tiny crescent of dried red wax. Samuel Price carried sealing wax in his document case. When I mentioned it, he said the case had remained in the dining room until after dinner. Miriam Blake said otherwise. She remembered Price, bringing it into the library before the meal, when he arrived early to speak with Whitmore. Price had arrived at 7:05, after the coat. Still, someone had used red wax near the chair, either before Price arrived or with wax obtained from another source. By 6 that evening, we had a false florist, a vanished warehouse supervisor, 2 storage tokens, another man's blood, and 4 guests whose motives were growing faster than their memories. I returned to the brownstone with copies of the Trident Exchange records. Wolfe had finished dinner and sat in the office with coffee. Fritz had prepared roast duck with chestnuts, which meant Wolfe's mood was available for business. I gave him the day's results. Arthur Dale appears to be the man behind token 31, I said. Token 27 belonged to Whitmore's father. Dale knew the house and may have posed as the florist. His blood type matches the stain. Convenient, Wolfe said. You disapprove? Evidence that assembles itself deserves suspicion. Dale was dismissed for theft. Was the theft proved? No. Whitmore accused him. Then Dale may have been dismissed because he discovered something. The hidden object in the coat, possibly. The lining contained a flat item. Someone removed it during the gathering or after Whitmore died. Who had early access? Wolfe closed his eyes. The servants, Miss Blake, Mr. Whitmore, and the false florist. But early access to the house is not the same as early access to the plan. The coat was prepared elsewhere. Its owner's blood stained the cuff. 2 tokens were placed within it. The person who arranged it knew Whitmore would understand token 27 and connect it with Mr. Dale's number. So Dale sent it, perhaps. Or someone used Dale's blood and token to create that conclusion. That requires planning. Murder usually does. He opened his eyes. The coat arrived before the first guest, Archie. Therefore, it did not identify a guest who had already come. It announced the presence of someone who was absent. Arthur Dale, or his ghost. Dale is not confirmed dead. Then find him before the murderer decides to improve the evidence. The telephone rang. I answered. It was Pearlie Stebbins. Police had reached Dale's furnished room near the waterfront. The room had been empty for 3 days. On the bed they found a shirt stiff with dried blood. In the wastebasket lay a florist's brown cap. And on the table was a 3rd brass token. Number 28, Chapter 3. A murder in the study. The 3rd brass token changed Arthur Dale from a suspect into a problem. Number 27 belonged to Harold Whitmore's family cabinet at the old Trident Exchange. Number 31 belonged to Dale. Number 28 had been left on the table in Dale's empty room beside a bloodstained shirt and a florist's cap. When evidence begins counting, it is wise to ask who taught it arithmetic. At 8:30 the next morning, Inspector Kramer called the brownstone and ordered me to the Whitmore house. The medical examiner has the poison, he said. Does he intend to keep it? Brandy. Whitmore drank poisoned brandy. The glass in the study contained water, not the glass we found in the cabinet. That got me moving. Wolfe was upstairs with the orchids. I left word with Fritz, took my hat, and found a taxi willing to cross town without declaring war on every other vehicle. The Whitmore residents had settled into the grey quiet of a house where death had become official. Flowers crowded the entrance table. Reporters still waited outside, but the family had stopped looking through the curtains. Kramer met me in the study. Pearlie Stebbins stood beside the drinks cabinet, and a laboratory man was examining its shelves. The cabinet contained a cut-glass decanter of brandy, several bottles of whiskey, glasses, and a silver tray. One glass stood upright. The other lay on its side behind the decanter. The killer missed housekeeping, Kramer said. The fallen glass had been partly hidden by the decanter and a folded cloth. A dark amber trace remained in its bottom. The brandy contained poison, I asked. A plant toxin called delayed aconite compound. The chemists say it was mixed with a sedative. Whitmore could have remained active for 3 or 4 hours before the final collapse. When did he drink it? That is what you are here to tell me. I thought I was here because you enjoyed my company. Kramer ignored that. The medical examiner placed death between 2 and 4 in the morning. Whitmore had probably consumed the poisoned brandy between 9 and 11 the previous evening. The sedative would first make him tired and slightly confused. The toxin would later disturb his heartbeat and breathing. The glass of water beside the body had contained no poison. Whitmore had probably poured it after he began feeling ill. So the killer expected him to die alone, I said, or expected everyone to assume he had. I examined the drinks cabinet without touching it. The decanter was half full. Laboratory tests had found no poison in the remaining brandy. Only the glass was poisoned? Yes, that required advanced preparation, not necessarily. Someone could have put poison into it during the party, while everyone wandered in and out of the library. This cabinet is in the study. Exactly. The study door opened off the library. During the gathering, anyone entering would risk being seen. But before the guests arrived, the house had been busy with servants, deliveries, and preparations. A poisoned glass could have been placed behind the decanter hours earlier. Did Whitmore normally use this glass? I asked. Kramer pointed to a silver W engraved near the base. His personal glass. The valet says nobody else touched it. There are people who mark their shirts, people who mark their luggage, and people who mark their drinking glasses. The last group makes life easier for poisoners. Peter Nash, the valet, was brought in. Mr. Whitmore drank one brandy each night, he said. Always after business. From that glass? Yes. Who washed it? I did. When did you last place it in the cabinet? Yesterday afternoon. Shortly before 5. Where exactly? On the silver tray beside the decanter. Upright, of course. Was there brandy in it? No. Did anyone enter the study after 5? Nash hesitated. Miss Blake worked here until 6:10. Mr. Price met with Mr. Whitmore before dinner. Mr. Lawson brought financial papers. Mrs. Whitmore entered once. Anyone else? Not that I saw. The false florist? No. He went only as far as the drawing room. That answer was too certain for a man who had not watched the florist every second. I asked whether Whitmore poured his own brandy. Always. He disliked being served after dinner. So someone poisoned the empty glass, knowing he would later pour into it. Nash looked disturbed by the simplicity. Was there anything unusual about the cabinet yesterday? No. Did you see the glass after dinner? I did not enter the study again. Kramer sent him out and brought Miriam Blake in. She wore dark blue and looked as though she had spent the night sorting grief into labeled folders. You worked in the study until 6:10, I said. Yes. Did you open the drinks cabinet? No. Did you see anyone do so? Mr. Whitmore opened it at 5:30. He offered Mr. Lawson brandy. Lawson was here before the dinner. She nodded. He arrived at 5:20 with financial reports, left at 6, then returned as a dinner guest at 7:12. That was new. Kramer's face confirmed it was new to him too. Why was that omitted? He demanded. I was asked when the dinner guests arrived. Mr. Lawson's earlier visit was business. It was also access. Miriam looked toward the cabinet. Mr. Lawson did not drink. Mr. Whitmore poured a small brandy for himself. From his marked glass? No, from the other one. Why? His own glass was not on the tray. Kramer and I looked at each other. Where was it? I asked. I do not know. It appeared later. That put the glass in someone's hands between 5 and dinner. What were Lawson and Whitmore discussing? Discrepancies in company accounts. Richard Barnes? Partly. Who else? She hesitated. Mr. Lawson's own management fees. That widened the field. Peter Lawson had advised Whitmore on investments for 7 years. He had access to accounts, schedules, and private company reports. If Whitmore was preparing to question those fees, Lawson had a reason to fear the study documents. Did Lawson know Whitmore would review papers after dinner? I asked. Yes. Who else knew? Mr. Price, Mr. Barnes, Mrs. Whitmore. I knew because I arranged the files. Clara Morgan. Harold mentioned that he might show her the foundation papers. Arthur Dale? Her eyes moved. I do not know. What did the missing documents concern? I did not say documents were missing. You did now. She pressed her lips together. Kramer stepped closer. What is gone? Miriam admitted that a blue folder had disappeared from Whitmore's desk. It contained audit summaries, warehouse records, and a written statement from Arthur Dale. That made the empty cut in the coat lining more interesting. What statement? I asked. Dale claimed he had discovered false inventory reports at one of the waterfront warehouses. He accused Richard Barnes and Peter Lawson of using company storage accounts to conceal private transactions. Why did Whitmore dismiss him? Because Mr. Barnes produced evidence that Dale had stolen cash. Was the evidence genuine? I do not know. Did Whitmore believe Dale? Recently, yes. The blue folder was supposed to be reviewed after dinner. Whitmore intended to compare Dale's statement with financial records brought by Lawson and legal agreements prepared by Samuel Price. Only 5 people knew that plan: Whitmore, Miriam Blake, Lawson, Price, and Richard Barnes. Ellen Whitmore knew her husband would work late, but not the details. Where was the blue folder at 6:10? Kramer asked. On the center of the desk. It was not there when the body was found. I went to the library and stood beside the empty green chair. The coat had delivered 2 messages. The visible token numbered 27, told Whitmore that his family's old Trident cabinet was involved. The hidden token numbered 31 connected Arthur Dale. Something flat had been removed from the lining, possibly Dale's written statement or proof from the storage cabinets. The coat had drawn Whitmore's attention away from the study. It may also have told the killer where the missing evidence was. Samuel Price arrived shortly before noon. He did not like being summoned again, but attorneys are trained to conceal dislike behind questions about authority. Kramer asked about his early meeting with Whitmore. "I arrived at 6:20, Price said. Miriam Blake corrected him from the doorway. "You arrived at 6:05. Price looked at her. "Perhaps. Before or after Lawson left?" I asked. "After." "What did Whitmore show you?" "Draft changes to his will and partnership agreements." "The blue folder?" "No." "Did you know it existed?" "I knew Whitmore intended to review financial evidence that evening." "What evidence?" "Possible irregularities involving company warehouses." "Barnes and Lawson." Price paused. "Those names were mentioned." "Arthur Dale." "Yes." "Did you enter the study alone?" "For 5 minutes while Whitmore spoke with his wife." "Did you open the drinks cabinet?" "No." "Did you see Whitmore's marked glass?" "I did not inspect his glassware." Price's document case contained red sealing wax, but the wax found beneath the coat had not yet been matched. He insisted the case remained with him. "You left it in the library before dinner," I said. "For less than a minute. Long enough for someone to take a piece of wax. Why would anyone?" "That is a good question. Keep it." Richard Barnes arrived next. He denied knowing about Whitmore's private review until dinner. Miriam contradicted him too. At 4:30, Mr. Whitmore telephoned Mr. Barnes and said the Dale statement would be examined that night. Barnes's face darkened. Whitmore was bluffing. "About what?" Kramer asked. Dale had no statement. "There was one," Miriam said. Barnes turned on her. "You typed whatever Whitmore ordered." "That did not make it true." I asked why Barnes had framed Dale for theft. "I did not frame him." "Then why is Dale missing?" "I have no idea." "Why was his blood on the coat?" "I have no idea." "Why was his token in the lining?" Barnes looked at the empty chair. "I have no idea." 3 identical answers are not always a lie, but they usually need supervision. Peter Lawson was harder to find. His office said he had not arrived. His apartment said he left early. At 1:50, Purley located him at a private bank near Wall Street. He came to the Whitmore house with a lawyer, which was efficient but unfriendly. Lawson admitted the 5:20 meeting. He claimed Whitmore had summoned him to discuss investment reports. "Did you touch the marked glass?" I asked. "No. It was missing while you were in the study. I did not notice." "Where did you put your briefcase?" "Beside the desk." "Did you open the drinks cabinet?" "No." "Did you know Whitmore planned to drink brandy while reviewing the reports?" Lawson's expression tightened. Everyone knew his habits. "Exactly." His lawyer objected to the tone, the question, the room, and possibly the weather. Kramer continued. "Whitmore had a folder accusing you of false management fees. Dale accused everyone who refused to pay him. Dale's room contains a florist's cap and a bloody shirt. That suggests Dale delivered the coat." "It suggests someone wants us to think he did," I said. Lawson looked at me. "Mr. Goodwin, I did not kill Harold Whitmore." "Did you poison his glass?" "No." "Did you remove the blue folder?" "No." "Did you know token 27 belonged to Whitmore's Trident cabinet?" "No." In Chapter 2, Lawson had said the symbol resembled an old storage company mark. Now he claimed ignorance of the specific cabinet. I reminded him. He said, "Recognition of a symbol is not knowledge of an account." "You also suggested the tokens were locker numbers." "A reasonable guess." "Very reasonable." Kramer let him leave after taking his fingerprints and a sample of his handwriting. At 2:30, the laboratory called. The poison had been applied to the inside rim of Whitmore's personal glass in a thin coating mixed with syrup. Once brandy was poured, the coating dissolved. The glass had likely been prepared at least 2 hours before Whitmore used it. Wolfe had been right. The murder was arranged before dinner. The coat, the false florist, and the gathering had provided movement and confusion, but the lethal act had already been completed. I telephoned Wolfe. He had finished lunch and was in the office. "The glass was coated before dinner," I said. "The poison dissolved when Whitmore poured brandy. He drank it sometime after 9 and survived until early morning." "Who knew his habit?" The entire household and the four main guests, who knew he would review the documents. Barnes, Price, Lawson, Miriam Blake and Whitmore, who had early access to the study. Lawson, Price, Miriam, Ellen Whitmore, Nash, and Whitmore himself. The coat? Probably placed between 5:40 and 6:15. Lawson was in the study from 5:20 until 6. Price arrived shortly after 6. The false florist came just before 6. 3 operations occurred, Wolfe said. The glass was prepared, the coat was placed, and the blue folder was removed. One person could have done all 3. Could have, yes, but did not necessarily. You think there were accomplices? I think the murderer used another person's plan. That deserved attention. Explain. The coat was intended to force Whitmore to acknowledge Arthur Dale and the Trident records. It was a warning or demand. The poison served another purpose entirely. Someone who knew the coat would appear used it to conceal a murder already prepared. The coat arrangement and the poisoning were separate. Likely. The coat announced a confrontation. Poison avoids confrontation. Then Arthur Dale may have arranged the coat, but not the murder. Precisely. Where is Dale? Find the meaning of token 28. I was hoping you might. Hope is laziness wearing perfume. He hung up. By late afternoon, Kramer's men had opened the old Trident cabinet numbered 28. It was registered not to Dale, Whitmore, Barnes, Price, or Lawson. It belonged to Clara Morgan. Inside were 3 empty document envelopes. A photograph of Harold Whitmore with Arthur Dale, taken 6 months earlier, and a recent receipt for a private medical clinic. The receipt was issued to Arthur Dale. It was dated the day before the dinner. Clara Morgan had claimed she did not know the meaning of token 31. She had also claimed she had not seen Dale in years. Both claims were now in need of repair. I returned to West 35th Street shortly before 6. Wolfe was behind his desk, a bottle of beer before him. I reported the poisoned glass, the missing blue folder, and the contents of Clara's cabinet. He listened with his eyes closed. When I finished, he said, "The murderer prepared for a private habit, not a public dinner. Whitmore's nightly brandy. Yes. The gathering merely fixed the hour at which he would retire to the study with the documents. Lawson had access and motive, so did others, but only a few knew about the review. That is the boundary of our inquiry." I looked at my notes. The coat was placed before the first guest arrived. The poison was applied before dinner. The missing folder was removed either before or after the murder. Wolfe opened his eyes. No, it was removed before Whitmore entered the study. How do you know? Because he postponed his announcement. The coat told him that evidence existed elsewhere. He went to the study to compare the documents, found the blue folder missing, and remained there, trying to determine who had taken it. Then why drink the brandy? Habit. Murderers profit from habits because habits do not ask questions. The telephone rang, I answered. It was Clara Morgan. Her voice was controlled, but barely. "Mr. Goodwin, I must speak with Mr. Wolfe. Arthur Dale is alive." "Where?" "I cannot tell you over the telephone." "Then come here." "I cannot. Someone is watching me." The line went dead. I repeated it to Wolfe. He rang for Fritz and instructed him to delay dinner. That was when I knew the case had become serious. Chapter 4. The owner of the coat. A man may lose an overcoat through carelessness, theft, or bad weather. Samuel Price had managed to lose his without reporting it, recognize it without admitting it, and attend a dinner where it waited for him on an empty chair. That required explanation. Before we asked for one, Wolfe dealt with Clara Morgan's telephone call. He instructed Saul Panzer to find her, determine who was watching her, and locate Arthur Dale if possible. Saul left the brownstone at 6:12 with the quiet efficiency of a man who never needed to announce that he intended to succeed. I wanted to go with him. Wolfe refused. "You will inspect the coat," he said. "The police laboratory has inspected it." "Then inspect what they overlooked. That is a broad assignment. It is narrower than finding a frightened woman somewhere in Manhattan." Wolfe remained. Behind his desk, his fingers resting against the arms of his chair. Dinner had been delayed, an event that ordinarily produced a household emergency. This time, he appeared less concerned with Fritz's roast duck than with Clara Morgan's final words. Arthur Dale was alive. That meant the blood-stained shirt in his room was either evidence of an injury or the decoration of a trap. It also meant Dale might explain why his numbered token had been hidden inside a coat belonging to no one. At 6:30, Inspector Kramer granted me access to the garment with the warmth of a landlord admitting a tenant who owed rent. The coat had been transferred to a property room at police headquarters. A laboratory technician named Harris placed it on a wide table beneath 2 bright lamps. "You have 40 minutes, he said. "Does the coat have another appointment?" "I do." The garment had already been photographed, brushed, measured, and searched. Its pockets had been turned out. The buttons had been examined. The charcoal wool had been traced to a high-quality English mill that supplied dozens of American tailors. The silk lining was newer than the outer fabric and had been replaced within the previous year. The ordinary tailor's label had been removed from the inside pocket. That interested me. A custom-made coat usually carries more than one identifying mark. A shop may remove its visible label, but a cutter often leaves a work ticket, customer number, or fitting code where alterations can be traced later. I began at the hem. The stitching along the bottom had been opened and re-sewn. The work was good, but not original. The same was true of the sleeve lining. Whoever replaced the silk had either wanted to preserve the coat or erase its history. The blood stain inside the right cuff remained visible as a faint brown shadow. Type B, not Whitmore's. No usable fingerprints had survived. I turned the collar back. Nothing. I felt along the seam with my fingertips. Near the left side, the padding was slightly thicker. A small section had been sewn by hand, with thread one shade darker than the rest. "Harris," I said, "did you open this?" He leaned over. "The collar seam?" "No reason to damage it." "There is now." He objected until I used Kramer's name in a sentence containing the word responsibility. Then he fetched a narrow blade and carefully lifted 4 stitches. Inside the collar was a strip of faded cloth no wider than my little finger. The printing had nearly disappeared, but beneath the lamp we could read it. "Alden and Rowe Custom Tailors, ordered 8461." Harris looked offended. "I was getting to that. You were getting to your appointment." He telephoned Kramer. I telephoned Wolfe. "A hidden order number," I told him. The visible label was removed, but the original work strip remained inside the collar. "The tailor?" "Alden and Rowe." There was a pause. "Lexington Avenue near 48th Street, Wolfe said. "The establishment has existed for many years. You buy clothes by geography?" "I observe competence." "Shall I go?" "Immediately. Take the coat." Kramer arrived before I could leave. He stared at the cloth strip and then at Harris. "You missed it," Harris said. "We were not authorized to cut every seam." Kramer turned to me. "You are enjoying this." "A little." He assigned Pearlie Stebbins to accompany me, partly to preserve the evidence, and partly to prevent Wolfe from claiming sole possession of the discovery. Alden and Rowe occupied the 2nd floor above a jewelry store. The entrance was quiet, the carpet thick, and the air carried the respectable smell of wool, chalk, and money. A thin, elderly man came from the rear room. His silver hair was brushed straight back, and a measuring tape hung around his neck. "I am Henry Alden," he said. "How may I assist you?" Pearlie showed his identification. Alden looked at the coat and frowned before touching it. "We need the customer for order 8461, I said. He did not consult a book. "Mr. Samuel Price." Pearlie glanced at me. "You remember immediately?" I asked. "I cut it myself." "Price has been a customer for 22 years. Alden lifted the coat by the shoulders and examined it with the personal displeasure of an artist discovering that someone had painted a mustache on his portrait. "This lining is not ours." "When was the coat made?" "For Samuel Price?" "Yes." "Any doubt?" "None. The right shoulder is lower by half an inch. The left sleeve is slightly longer. Mr. Price prefers a narrow collar and hidden inside buttons. Those details were made for him. Did he bring it back for relining?" "No. Someone else did that." "How can you tell?" "Our lining would carry a woven shop mark inside the right pocket. It has been removed." "Could the coat have been altered for another wearer?" Alden studied the shoulders. "Not substantially. The outer structure remains fitted to Mr. Price." I asked whether order records still existed. He produced a heavy ledger and found the entry. Samuel Price had ordered the coat on September 14, 3 years earlier. Dark charcoal wool, black silk lining, 3-button front, concealed inner document pocket. "Document pocket?" I asked. Alden turned the coat inside out and pointed to the cut in the left lining. Originally here, it was made to hold folded legal papers without creating a bulge. The flat object removed from the lining had not been hidden by accident. The coat had been designed to carry it. When did you last see Mr. Price wearing the coat? Last winter. He came for a fitting on another suit. Did anyone ask about this order recently? Alden's face changed. Yes. When? About 3 weeks ago. A man telephoned and said he was Mr. Price's secretary. He asked whether the order number could identify the customer. What did you tell him? That we did not discuss customers by telephone. Description of the voice. Male, cultivated, perhaps 40 or 50. Did he call again? No. Did you inform Price? I mentioned it when his office telephoned about an invoice. What was the response? His secretary said Mr. Price had recently lost an overcoat. Pearlie asked. Lost or stolen? Alden considered it. She said stolen. That moved us from identification to contradiction. Price had been questioned repeatedly about the coat and had never mentioned owning one like it. We took the coat downtown, but Samuel Price was not at his office. His secretary said he had left for a late appointment. Pearlie stationed a man there while I called Wolfe. The coat belongs to Price, I reported. Custom made 3 years ago. The hidden pocket was part of the original design. Someone telephoned the tailor 3 weeks ago, asking whether the order number could identify the owner. Price's office later said the coat had been stolen. Did Mr. Price report the theft to the police? Not that Kramer can find. Bring him here. Kramer may prefer headquarters. Then he may prefer ignorance. Wolfe hung up. It was nearly 9 when Samuel Price was located at his club. Kramer agreed to bring him to West 35th Street because he wanted to see Wolfe question him, and because the club dining room contained too many witnesses for his preferred manner of conversation. Price entered our office at 9:40 with Kramer behind him and Pearlie carrying the coat in an evidence cover. Wolfe had eaten dinner. Fritz had preserved the duck from ruin, though not from criticism. A bottle of beer stood on Wolfe's desk. Price sat in the red leather chair. His face was composed, but he looked at the covered garment before he looked at Wolfe. Mr. Price, Wolfe said, the coat found in Harold Whitmore's library was made for you. Price crossed one leg over the other. I wondered when you would discover that. Kramer made a noise deep in his throat. You wondered, he said. You saw it at the dinner and denied recognizing it. I did not recognize it with certainty. Wolfe lifted his brows. A custom-made garment fitted to your uneven shoulders, with a collar and buttons selected by you. It was across the room. The light was poor. You stood beside it twice, I said. Price turned to me. I stood beside many objects that evening. Only one of them belonged to you. He looked back at Wolfe. The coat was stolen several weeks ago, he said. I had no reason to assume the garment at Whitmore's house was the same one. When was it stolen? Wolfe asked. 3 weeks ago Friday. Where? From my office. Describe the circumstances. Price placed both hands on the arms of the chair. I worked late. The coat hung in the private reception room. When I left, it was gone. Who had access? My secretary, 2 junior attorneys, the cleaning staff, and several clients. Did you report it? No, why not? It was an overcoat, not a valuable painting. It was valuable enough to be custom made. I assumed someone had taken it by mistake. Did anyone return another coat? No. Did you inform Mr. Whitmore? No. Did you inform the tailor? My secretary may have mentioned it. Wolfe took a sip of beer. A man had already telephoned Alden and Rowe, asking whether the hidden order number would identify the owner. That inquiry occurred shortly after the theft. Price's fingers tightened. I know nothing about that. Someone stole your coat, investigated its identifying marks, removed the visible label, replaced the lining, cut open the document pocket, stained the cuff with Arthur Dale's blood, inserted 2 numbered tokens, and delivered it to Harold Whitmore's library. Price's face remained controlled. His breathing did not. Kramer said, and you happened to be at the dinner. I was Whitmore's attorney. My presence was not unusual. Your silence was. Price looked at him. What would you have had me say? That a similar coat had been stolen from my office? In a room full of people already alarmed by Harold's behaviors. Yes, Kramer said. I chose not to create a foolish distraction. The distraction was hanging on a chair. Price's mouth hardened. Wolfe said, "What had you carried in the concealed pocket?" "Legal papers." "What papers were there when the coat disappeared?" "Nah." That answer came too readily. "It is true." "Did Arthur Dale ever visit your office?" Price hesitated. "Once." Kramer moved forward. "When?" "4 weeks ago." "The coat was stolen." "Why?" "He wished to give me documents concerning Whitmore Consolidated." "What documents?" "Wareheld records and a written accusation against Richard Barnes and Peter Lawson." That was the blue folder's territory. "What did you do with them?" I asked. "I refused to accept them." "Why?" "Dale had been dismissed for theft. I told him to approach the police." "Did Whitmore know he came?" "I informed him." "Did Dale leave anything behind?" "No." "Did he see your coat?" Price's eyes flicked toward the evidence cover. It was hanging in the reception room. Wolfe leaned back. "Then Mr. Dale knew the coat belonged to you. He may also have known about its concealed document pocket." "Possibly." "Did he steal it?" "I did not see him take it." "Who else knew he visited?" "My secretary, Harold. Perhaps Peter Lawson, who arrived as Dale was leaving." That last name changed the room. "Lawson saw Dale at your office?" Kramer asked. "Yes." "Why did you not mention that before?" "You did not ask." Kramer's cigar nearly suffered structural damage. Wolfe asked, "Did Mr. Dale appear injured?" "No." "Agitated?" "Yes." "He said people had been killed for less than what he knew." "Exact words?" "Nearly exact." "Did he mention the Trident exchange?" Price looked surprised. "He mentioned an old storage facility. He claimed Whitmore's father had hidden original records there." "Cabinet 27? I do not remember the number." 31? No, 28. Price shook his head. Wolfe watched him. "Mr. Price, why did you carry red sealing wax in your document case?" "I seal confidential packets." "A fragment of matching color was found beneath the chair holding your coat. Many attorneys use red wax." "Indeed." "Did anyone take wax from your case?" "Not that I know." "Where was the case?" "During dinner, beside my chair." "Before dinner?" "In the library." "Briefly, you entered the house after the coat had been placed. Therefore, unless the timeline is wrong, your wax was not used to secure the coat before your arrival." Price relaxed slightly. Wolfe noticed. "But it may have been used later," he said. The relaxation vanished. Kramer uncovered the coat and held it up. "Recognize it now?" Price looked at it for several seconds. "Yes, put it on." Price stared at him. "What?" "Put it on." The laboratory had finished its external work, and Kramer had arranged a protective inner covering. Price stood, removed his jacket, and put on the coat. It fitted him perfectly. The shoulders settled into place. The sleeves ended at the proper point. The narrow collar lay exactly as Henry Alden had described. The effect was unpleasant. For 3 days the coat had seemed like an anonymous garment built for an absent man. Now the absent man stood inside it. Price removed it quickly. "Are you satisfied?" "No," Kramer said. Wolfe said, "Sit down." Price did. "You claim the coat was stolen," Wolfe continued. "That may be true. Its use at Whitmore's dinner may have been designed to implicate you. But you recognized it that evening." "I suspected." "You also knew its concealed pocket could hold documents." "Yes." "When Whitmore saw token 27, he said, 'Not here.' Did you understand him?" "No." "Did you search the coat during the gathering?" Price's head came up. "No." "Someone did." "The document pocket was cut and emptied. The second token remained because it slipped beneath the new lining." "I did not touch it." "Were you alone in the library at any time?" "For perhaps 2 minutes before dinner." "The coat was already present." "I did not examine it." "During those 2 minutes, did you open your document case?" "Yes." "Why?" "I placed Whitmore's revised agreements inside." "Did you leave the case unattended afterward?" "Briefly." "Who approached it?" "No." Wolfe closed his eyes. Kramer looked at me, then at Price, then back at Wolfe. Waiting for Wolfe's eyes to open is one of the few activities that makes Kramer appear patient. "When they did," Wolfe said, "your account is possible." Price released a breath. "It is also incomplete." The breath stopped. "You have concealed your recognition of the coat, Mr. Dale's visit, Mr. Lawson's presence, and your knowledge of the hidden document pocket. Those omissions may arise from fear, professional secrecy, or guilt. I do not yet choose among them. I have told you the truth. You have provided pieces of it. Price stood. "Am I under arrest?" Kramer said. "Not yet." "Then I am leaving." Wolfe did not object. Price took his jacket, refused to look at the coat again, and went to the hall. Pearlie followed him to the door. Kramer remained. "Well?" he demanded. Wolfe reached for his beer. "Well, what?" "The coat belongs to Price. His wax was under the chair. He knew Dale." He lied. "Those are facts. You do not think he killed Whitmore?" "I neither think it nor reject it," Kramer scowled. "That is not an answer. It is the only honest one available." The telephone rang, I answered. Saul Panzer's voice came quietly over the line. "I found Clara Morgan. She is safe." "Where?" "At a small private clinic on West 19th Street. "And Dale?" "He was there. He checked out 2 hours before I arrived." "Was he injured?" "Yes, a deep cut on his right forearm. The clinic treated him the day before Whitmore's dinner." "That explains the blood." "Clara says Dale gave her something before he disappeared." "What?" "A sealed packet. She hid it in Trident Cabinet 28. The cabinet was empty when the police opened it." "I know. Someone removed the packet first." I looked at Wolfe. "Who had the key?" I asked. "Clara and Harold Whitmore. Whitmore had been dead when the cabinet was opened." I relayed Saul's report. Kramer grabbed his hat and headed for the door. Wolfe stopped him with one sentence. "Mr. Kramer, ask who knew Harold possessed the second key." Kramer turned. "Price? Possibly. Possibly. You enjoy that word. It prevents premature arrests." Kramer left with Pearlie and the coat. The office became quiet. Fritz appeared in the doorway to inquire whether Wolfe required anything. Wolfe requested beer and informed him that tomorrow's lunch should not be altered by police activity. I sat at my desk. "The coat belonged to Price," I said. Dale had seen it. "Someone used Dale's blood and tokens to turn Price's property into a message for Whitmore." "Yes." "Was Price being accused or warned by Dale?" "Possibly." I gave him a look. He ignored it. "The coat arrived before the guests," Wolfe said. "Its placement was planned by someone with early access. Mr. Price arrived later and concealed his recognition. Those facts do not prove he arranged it. But the hidden packet from Cabinet 28 may have been carried in the coat." "Yes, and someone searched the document pocket during the gathering. Probably after Whitmore saw token 27 and reacted." "Who?" Wolfe leaned back and closed his eyes. "The person who knew what Arthur Dale had placed there. The coat had found its owner. The missing document had not." Chapter 5. Harold's discovery. Money has one advantage over murder. It keeps records. A murderer may wipe a glass, burn a letter, or provide himself with a respectable overcoat. Money must pass through hands, accounts, companies, banks, and men who charge fees for pretending not to notice where it came from. Saul Panzer began following Harold Whitmore's money at 9 Thursday morning. By noon, 3 banks had become uncooperative. 2 accountants had developed poor memories, and Samuel Price had acquired a motive large enough to require its own chair. Wolfe learned this after lunch. He had spent the morning upstairs with the orchids, where roots behaved logically and flowers did not consult attorneys. At 1:30 he entered the office, settled behind his desk, and accepted coffee from Fritz. Saul sat in the yellow chair with a narrow file on his knee. I was at my desk with the notes from the previous 4 days arranged before me. The office windows admitted a pale winter light and the distant complaint of traffic on West 35th Street. Wolfe looked at Saul. "Well?" "Whitmore discovered money missing from 6 company accounts," Saul said. "Not all at once. Small transfers began nearly 3 years ago. The amounts increased during the last 14 months. "How much?" "Just over $900,000. I whistled. Wolfe frowned at me. "That is not information. It expresses respect for the total." Saul opened the file. The money moved through legal retainers, settlement accounts, warehouse purchases, and private trusts. Most transfers were approved by Harold Whitmore or appeared to carry his approval. "Appeared?" Wolfe asked. "Some signatures were copied. Others were genuine, but attached to incomplete documents. Whitmore often signed authorization pages before final schedules were prepared. A reckless habit. Samuel Price prepared many of those documents. That put the attorney in the center of the room without his being present." Saul continued. "Price had served as Whitmore's personal attorney for 18 years. He drafted partnership agreements, administered 2 family trusts, arranged confidential property purchases, and controlled several escrow accounts used when Whitmore wanted his name kept out of public records. Did Mr. Price personally receive the missing funds? Wolfe asked. Not directly. The money passed through 3 companies: Graydon Services, Mercantile Advisory, and East Lane Holdings. Owners, nominees. 2 are clerks in Price's office. The third is his brother-in-law. Mr. Price controlled them? Probably. His office created all 3. Probably as a guest without an invitation. Saul nodded. I am still proving it. He placed several photocopies on Wolfe's desk. The first showed a payment of $60,000 from a Whitmore shipping account to Graydon Services for legal research. No research report existed. The second showed transferred to East Lane Holdings for the purchase of storage property that Whitmore Consolidated already owned. The third was a series of monthly payments to Mercantile Advisory, each described as a confidential settlement. Settlement with whom? I asked. No name appears. Who signed? Price approved the legal purpose. Peter Lawson approved the release of funds. Whitmore's signature appears on the final authorization. Genuine on 2. Questionable on the others. Wolfe picked up 1 copy and examined it. Mr. Lawson knew of the transfers? He says he trusted Price's legal descriptions. He saw totals, not supporting documents. That is either negligence or collaboration. Lawson claims negligence. People prefer it. It sounds less deliberate. I asked Saul what had led Whitmore to discover the missing money. Arthur Dale. The name joined Price's in the center of the room. 6 months earlier, Dale had supervised one of Whitmore's waterfront warehouses. He noticed that inventory was being moved on paper without entering or leaving the building. Storage charges were paid to East Lane Holdings, although Whitmore already owned the facility. Dale copied several records and confronted Richard Barnes. Why Barnes? I asked. Barnes managed the shipping division. Dale assumed he was responsible, and Barnes accused Dale of theft. Yes. Cash was found in Dale's locker. Whitmore dismissed him. Planted? Dale claimed it was. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. When did Whitmore begin to believe him? About 2 months ago. A second warehouse manager reported the same false inventory movements. Whitmore compared the accounts and found Price's companies behind the payments. Then he contacted Dale, through Clara Morgan. That explained Clara's secret meetings in Cabinet 28. Saul said Clara had known Dale since he was a boy. His mother had worked for her family. After Whitmore dismissed him, Clara helped him find temporary work and paid for the private clinic that treated his injured arm. Dale gave Clara the sealed packet, I said. Yes, it contained copies of warehouse ledgers and a statement describing the scheme. The packet removed from Cabinet 28? Saul nodded. Clara placed it there the morning before the dinner, she told Whitmore, and he used his second key to inspect it that afternoon. Then why was the cabinet empty when the police opened it? Someone returned after Whitmore and removed the packet. Who knew the cabinet number? Clara, Whitmore, Dale, and possibly Price. Possibly again, Wolfe said. Saul accepted the rebuke. Price handled old Whitmore family property records. Cabinet 27 belonged to Harold's father. Cabinet 28 had once been rented by Clara's father. Price had access to both sets of records. Wolfe leaned back. The third token, number 28, was left in Dale's room to direct attention to Miss Morgan. Or warn her, I said. Perhaps. The telephone rang. It was Inspector Kramer. We found papers in Whitmore's study, he said. Not the blue folder. Something else. Get Wolfe ready. Ready for what? For me. He arrived 20 minutes later with pearly Stebbins and a brown evidence envelope. Kramer took the red leather chair without invitation. Pearly remained near the door. Wolfe looked at the envelope. Your expression suggests triumph, he said. That is often premature. Kramer put 3 sheets on the desk. They had been found behind a removable panel in the bottom drawer of Whitmore's desk. The panel was thin enough to escape the first search and loose enough for a laboratory man to notice when the drawer was taken apart. 1 page was a summary of missing funds. 1 was a list of companies and account numbers. The third was a memorandum in Whitmore's handwriting. I read it over Wolfe's shoulder. SP has offered no satisfactory explanation for the Graydon and East Lane payments. Complete records will be reviewed Friday. Unless full restitution and disclosure are made, I shall inform the board and the district attorney. Beneath it, Whitmore had written, Price knows Dale has the copies. Kramer looked at Wolfe. Samuel Price. Wolfe read the memorandum twice. It points toward him. It does more than point. Whitmore discovered Price was stealing from him. Price knew Dale had proof. Price's coat appears at the dinner carrying Dale's blood and storage tokens. Whitmore is poisoned before he can expose the theft. A pleasing arrangement. Kramer's eyes narrowed. You think it is too easy. I think ease deserves examination. Kramer planted both palms on the arms of his chair. Price had access to the study before dinner. So did others. He knew Whitmore's nightly brandy habit. So did others. He prepared the financial documents. That is significant. He lied about recognizing his coat. Also significant. He knew Dale had evidence. Mr. Whitmore's note says so. What else do you require? A confession written on his shirt. A confession on another man's shirt would interest me more. Kramer turned to Saul. What have you got? Saul summarized the companies and transfers. Kramer listened without interrupting. When Saul finished, he said, That gives me enough to bring Price in. For questioning, Wolfe said. For whatever I decide. You have not established that he received the money. He created the companies. Through clerks and a relative, he controlled the papers. Perhaps. Kramer stood. You can sit here admiring uncertainty. I have work. He collected the original sheets, leaving us copies, and went out with Pearlie. I looked at Wolfe. You are defending Price. No, you are not accusing him. No. That leaves a narrow path. It leaves the path of thought. Saul said. There is another problem. Graydon Services paid Samuel Price personally. Wolfe's gaze moved to him. How much? $24,000 over 18 months. For what? Consulting fees. What did Price declare? That the payments covered work performed outside his duties for Whitmore. Did he perform it? I found no evidence. That was bad for Price and good for Kramer. The doorbell rang before Wolfe could comment. It was Miriam Blake. She entered carrying a black notebook and looked as if she had come because staying away had become more dangerous. I found this in Mr. Whitmore's private correspondence cabinet, she said. Wolfe indicated the red leather chair. What is it? His appointment notebook. He kept two. The police took the ordinary one, but this was hidden behind personal letters. She handed it to me. It was a small black book with dates written in Whitmore's compact hand. Most entries consisted of initials and times. 3 weeks before the murder, AD through CM, statement credible. Ask SP, 2 weeks before, SP, denies control of Graydon. Check incorporation papers, 6 days before, PL, believes legal descriptions false, will bring account summaries. Cabinet, 28, proof sufficient. Confront Price, Friday. I passed the notebook to Wolfe. Why Friday? I asked. Miriam answered. The board met Friday afternoon. Then the dinner was not the planned confrontation. No, Whitmore intended to tell the guests that an audit would begin. He planned to speak privately with Mr. Price later, after he reviewed the blue folder. Who knew Friday was the deadline? Mr. Price, Mr. Lawson, Richard Barnes may have known. I knew. Clara Morgan? Harold told her he expected the matter resolved within days. Wolfe asked, when did Mr. Price learn that Dale's statement was credible? 3 weeks ago, the same period in which his coat disappeared. Yes. Did Whitmore instruct you to prepare copies of the financial evidence? Miriam hesitated. He instructed me to make 2 sets. Where are they? One was placed in the blue folder. The second was sealed in a flat packet. The packet hidden in Mr. Price's coat? I do not know. You typed it? Yes. Who collected it? Whitmore. When? The afternoon before the dinner. What did he do with it? He said he intended to place it where no one connected with the company would think to look. The Trident exchange, I said. Possibly. Wolfe's eyes went half shut. The packet in Clara's cabinet could have been Dale's evidence. Whitmore's duplicate set may have been the flat object carried in Price's hidden coat pocket. If so, someone had used Price's own garment to deliver the proof to the dinner. Did Mr. Whitmore know the coat belonged to Price? Wolfe asked. I believe he did. Then his words, not here, may have been directed not to an absent visitor, but to the person who sent the coat. Miriam looked puzzled. Wolfe continued. Someone warned Whitmore that the duplicate evidence had been moved into Mr. Price's coat. Whitmore understood the message and ordered the garment left untouched. "Why not remove the papers immediately?" I asked. "Because the coat's arrival told him the sender was inside his security. He did not know whom to trust." Miriam's face had gone pale. "I left him alone with Mr. Price after 10:30, she said. Kramer's earlier reconstruction had placed Price and Whitmore in the library near that hour, but the poisoned brandy was consumed in the study later. Price could have entered, removed the packet from his coat, and allowed Whitmore to drink from the prepared glass. It fit. That was precisely why Wolfe disliked it." Miriam left after giving us permission to turn the notebook over to Kramer. Saul departed to confirm ownership of the shell companies. At 4:20, Kramer called. Samuel Price had been brought to headquarters. He denied stealing money, poisoning the glass, arranging the coat, or removing any packet. He admitted receiving payments from Graydon Services, but claimed Whitmore had authorized them. "Did he produce authorization?" I asked. "No." "Did he explain why the company used his clerk as a nominee?" "He says Whitmore wanted secrecy." That was the kind of answer a lawyer gives, when he knows the dead cannot object. At 5:15, Saul returned. He had located the incorporation papers for Graydon Services. They bore the signature of Price's senior clerk, but the filing fee had been paid from an account controlled by Peter Lawson. That disturbed the simple picture. "Lawson financed Price's shell company?" I asked. "Or someone used Lawson's account," Saul said. "Did Lawson approve it?" "His authorization code was used." Wolfe asked, "Could Price obtain that code?" "Yes. Legal and financial offices exchanged them regularly." "Could Lawson create Graydon while making it appear to belong to Price?" "Yes." "Could Price create it while making Lawson appear involved?" "Yes." Wolfe made a disgusted sound. "Modern finance is a conspiracy against clarity." I sat on the corner of my desk. Whitmore's discovery pointed toward Price. "The coat belongs to Price." The hidden pocket carried evidence against Price. Price knew Dale had the documents. Price received money from one of the companies. "Yes," Wolfe said. "Lawson's authorization paid for that company." "Yes." "Barnes was accused in the warehouse records." "Yes." "And someone removed Dale's packet from Clara's cabinet." "Yes." "You are enjoying this?" "No. I am surrounded by men who protect dishonesty with paperwork." Fritz entered with Wolfe's beer. Wolfe poured, watched the foam settle, and took a sip. "The murderer knew Whitmore would review documents in the study," he said. "The glass was poisoned in advance. Therefore, the murderer feared what those documents would reveal. Price had the strongest reason. The evidence says so loudly. Too loudly, possibly. I restrained myself from commenting on the word." Wolfe picked up the black notebook. "Mr. Whitmore wrote, 'Ask SP then.' SP. Denies control. Finally, confront Price, Friday." Those entries establish Whitmore's suspicion, not Price's guilt. They establish motive, yes, but motive is not ownership of an act. The telephone rang again. This time it was Clara Morgan. Saul had moved her to a hotel under another name, but someone had reached her room first. Nothing had been taken except a photograph she carried in her handbag. The photograph showed Arthur Dale standing beside Harold Whitmore, outside the Trident Exchange. On the back, in Whitmore's handwriting, were 4 words. Price was there too. I repeated them to Wolfe. He set down his glass. "Archie, find the original negative." "Where?" asked Miss Morgan, who took the photograph. "Then determine why someone who has already killed for documents now fears a picture." Evidence pointed towards Samuel Price so neatly that Inspector Kramer was ready to put handcuffs on him. Wolfe was not. A financial record can show where money went. A photograph can show who stood in a certain place. Neither proves who prepared a glass of brandy for a man expected to die alone. But someone had stolen the picture after the murder. That meant Harold Whitmore's discovery was not finished revealing itself. Chapter 6. Why the coat placed a coat can resemble a man only from a distance. That was all the murderer required. At 10 the next morning, Wolfe had me arrange the statements from the Whitmore household in 4 piles. 1 pile covered arrivals, 1 covered dinner, 1 covered the period in the library. The 4th contained statements concerning Samuel Price. The 4th pile was the thickest. Wolfe sat behind his desk with his eyes closed. Sunlight reached through the office windows and touched the glass vase, holding 3 pale orchids. Fritz had brought beer, but Wolfe had not yet opened the bottle. That meant the papers had offended him more than thirst had attracted him. "Read the references to Mr. Price," he said. "I began with Richard Barnes." Price remained in the library most of the evening. Then Clara Morgan. "I remember Samuel standing near the door when Harold discussed the audit." Then Peter Lawson. Price was close to the empty chair throughout the conversation. Then Ellen Whitmore. "I saw Samuel's dark coat beside the library entrance and assumed he was still nearby." Wolfe opened his eyes. Again, I read Ellen's statement. Wolfe said, "She saw the coat and inferred the man. That is what she says. It is what all of them did." Barnes says Price remained in the library. "Did he watch him, Simone?" "No. Miss Morgan remembers him." "Near the door. Did she see his face?" "She does not specify." Mr. Lawson places him near the chair, conveniently. I took the arrival and departure chart from my desk. Price arrived at 6:05 for his private meeting. He joined dinner at 7. After dinner, he entered the library with the others. He admits leaving twice, once to telephone his office and once to get documents from the study. "How long?" He says the telephone call lasted 10 minutes. The house operator recorded a connection from 9:12 until 9:27. 15 minutes. Yes. And the second absence? Between 10:10 and 10:25, according to Price. Who confirms it? No one. Wolfe opened the beer and poured. The coat was placed before the guests arrived. It was not forgotten, and it was not merely a container for documents. Its position was chosen, on the green chair beside the library door, visible from the dining room passage, the fireplace, and the study, also shaped to resemble a seated man. Yes, I looked at the statements again. The guests saw Price wearing a dark suit. His coat was dark charcoal. From behind, across a warm room, the coat could look like his shoulders. Not precisely. Precision was unnecessary. The eye saw a familiar garment where it expected a familiar man. Memory completed the fraud. That was the kind of sentence Wolfe enjoyed enough to make me suspicious. So the coat served as a false witness. Exactly. To prove Price attended the gathering, he attended. That fact required no invention. To make people believe he stayed in the library when he did not, Wolfe drank beer. Now you approach it. The doorbell rang. Saul Panzer entered, carrying a flat photographic envelope. He had found the photographer who took the picture stolen from Clara Morgan's handbag. The man was a retired Whitmore employee named James Rudd. 6 months earlier, Rudd had photographed Harold Whitmore and Arthur Dale outside the Trident Exchange at Whitmore's request. Saul placed the original print and negative on Wolfe's desk. The stolen copy had shown Whitmore and Dale near the entrance. The uncropped original showed a third man at the edge of the frame, Peter Lawson. He stood partly behind a parked automobile, watching Whitmore and Dale. Price was there too, I said, recalling Whitmore's note. Saul nodded. Inside the building, Rudd saw him leave 5 minutes later. The photograph did not include him. Then Whitmore's words were not a caption, Wolfe said. They were a reminder. Price was inside cabinet 27 while Lawson watched the entrance. What were they doing? I asked. Dale says Price examined old company records. You found Dale at a boarding house in Hoboken. He is frightened, but alive. Did he arrange the coat? Yes. That made Wolfe put down his glass, Saul explained. Dale had stolen Price's coat 3 weeks earlier, though he preferred the word borrowed. He knew about its hidden document pocket, because he had seen Price place legal papers there during their meeting. Dale gave the coat to Clara Morgan. Clara arranged for its lining to be replaced after Dale's blood stained the cuff. Dale had cut his arm while escaping from one of Whitmore's warehouses with copied ledgers. Why leave the stain? I asked. He wanted Whitmore to know the warning came from him. The token numbered 31, Wolfe said. Yes. His Trident cabinet number. And 27? Whitmore's family cabinet. Dale placed that token in the visible pocket. It told Whitmore where the original records could be found. The packet in the hidden pocket? Copies of the financial ledgers. Dale placed them there before Clara sent the coat to the house. I sat forward. Clara arranged the false florist. Yes, she hired a former theatre dresser named Owen Pike. He delivered the coat inside the flower box and placed it on the chair. So Clara lied about recognizing the coat and the tokens. She was protecting Dale. Who removed the packet? Dale does not. No, Wolfe said. Why did he not appear at the front door himself? He did. He was the man with the scarf at 9:15. He expected Whitmore to admit him after seeing the coat. Whitmore refused because the guests were present. The coat had been a warning from Dale and Clara. It had told Whitmore that the evidence he needed was inside Price's own garment, but someone had turned that warning into a weapon against Price. Did Dale poison the glass? I asked. No, he never entered the study. Did Clara? She entered the house only as a guest, after the glass had been prepared. Wolfe leaned back. Then the murderer learned of their plan. Saul nodded. Dale told Price about the coat during their office meeting. He warned Price that evidence would be delivered to Whitmore if the missing money was not restored. Price knew the coat might appear. He knew Dale had taken it and intended to use it, but not when. That explained Price's recognition and silence. He had seen his stolen coat at the dinner and understood that it carried evidence capable of ruining him. Admitting ownership would have forced him to explain Dale's accusation. It did not make him innocent of theft or murder. The telephone rang. Kramer had found a new discrepancy in the dinner statements. Peter Lawson originally claimed Price remained in the library from 9 until 9:30. The telephone records proved Price was in a small office across the hall for 15 minutes. Lawson says he was mistaken, Kramer reported. Ask what he actually saw, I said. I did. He saw the back of the coat. I looked at Wolfe. He had been right, which was becoming monotonous. Kramer continued. Clara Morgan also thought Price was near the door, but now admits she never saw his face. Barnes was talking to Whitmore. Mrs. Whitmore saw only the coat. Did anyone definitely see Price in the library during the call? No. Who knew he was absent? The operator, anyone in the hall, and Lawson. Lawson asked where Price had gone at 9:13. That was worth writing down. When the call ended, Wolfe instructed me to bring Peter Lawson to the brownstone. Lawson declined by telephone. Wolfe told me to inform him that Arthur Dale was alive and had given the police a complete statement. Lawson arrived 40 minutes later. He sat in the red leather chair with his hat on his knees. I understand Dale has accused me, he said. He has described financial irregularities, Wolfe replied. Accusation is unnecessary. The records perform that service. Lawson looked at Saul, then at me. What does this have to do with Price's coat? Much. You repeatedly placed Price in the library at times when he was absent. I was mistaken. You were not mistaken when you asked where he had gone. Lawson's face remained calm, but his fingers pressed into the brim of his hat. Wolfe continued. At 9:12, Mr. Price left to telephone his office. You knew it. Yet you later told the police he stood near the empty chair until 9:30. I confused the times. No. You confused the man with the coat and hoped others would do likewise. That is nonsense. The coat had been positioned to resemble a seated figure. Its owner was Mr. Price. You encouraged witnesses to associate that figure with him. I did nothing of the kind. You said Price was beside the chair. Mrs. Whitmore then remembered seeing him there, Mr. Barnes adopted the same recollection. None had seen his face. Lawson stood. I came voluntarily, and may leave voluntarily. But before you do, consider the consequence. Someone used that coat to establish Mr. Price's presence during periods when he was elsewhere. The same person used financial companies tied to Price's employees and relatives. The same person stole a photograph connecting Price with the Trident records. Lawson's eyes narrowed. You are suggesting I framed him. I am stating that he was framed. That does not make me responsible. No, your conduct does. Lawson turned toward the door. Wolfe said, Where were you while Mr. Price used the telephone? Lawson stopped. In the library. Who saw you? Everyone. Name one. He did not. Richard Barnes had been arguing privately with Whitmore near the fireplace. Clara Morgan and Ellen Whitmore had gone to the drawing room. Miriam Blake was supervising coffee. Samuel Price was on the telephone. For nearly 15 minutes, no one could place Peter Lawson. The coat was your witness too, Wolfe said. It drew attention toward Mr. Price and away from whoever moved between the library and study. Lawson looked back at him. You cannot prove I entered the study. Not yet. Lawson left. I went to the hall window and watched him cross West 35th Street without looking behind him. When I returned, Wolfe was studying the timeline. The poison was applied before dinner, I said. Lawson's 9 o'clock absence does not prove he prepared the glass. No, it may prove he removed the packet from the coat. He searched Price's document pocket while everyone believed Price stood beside it. Or entered the study to remove the blue folder. Why create a false memory of Price's presence if Price was actually absent, to make later recollections useless? If poison or documents were discovered, witnesses would associate Price with the room and the coat. They would remember his property more clearly than his movements. Saul said, Price may still have stolen the money. Certainly, Wolfe replied. Being framed for murder does not confer honesty. That was fair. The coat had belonged to Samuel Price. Dale had stolen it to deliver evidence. Clara had placed it in the house as a warning. Price had recognized it and concealed the truth to protect himself. But someone else had shaped it over the empty chair, encouraged witnesses to treat it as a man, removed the packet from its hidden pocket, and used its ownership to guide every suspicion toward Price. Wolfe gathered the statements into one stack. The coat was not an object left behind, he said. It was a witness manufactured before the crime. A witness that could not speak. Better, a speaking witness may be questioned, and a coat only tells people what they already expect. Wolfe nodded. Someone had expected Samuel Price to be blamed. For the first time, we were looking past the coat at the person who had placed him inside it. Chapter 7. The real killer frame is most convincing when the man inside it supplies part of the picture. Samuel Price had supplied his coat, his concealed fees, his lies about Arthur Dale, and his reluctance to admit that he recognized the garment in Harold Whitmore's library. Peter Lawson had supplied careless authorizations and a memory that placed Price beside the empty chair when Price was actually using the telephone. Richard Barnes had supplied indignation. It had nearly been enough. The first crack appeared at 10:15 Friday morning, when Saul Panzer brought Owen Pike to the brownstone. Pike was the former theatre dresser Clara Morgan had hired to deliver the coat in a florist's box. He was short, quick-eyed, and dressed in a checked suit that suggested he had retained his professional respect for scenery. He sat in the red leather chair and looked at Saul. "You," said Mr. Wolfe, only wanted the truth. "That is frequently expensive," I told him. Wolfe entered from the plant rooms at 11, settled behind his desk, and regarded Pike. "You delivered Samuel Price's coat to the Whitmore residence?" "Yes, sir. You told Mr. Panzer that you placed it on the green chair in the library." Pike swallowed. "That was what I was supposed to do." "It was not what you did." Pike looked toward the door. Saul said quietly, "Tell him." Pike rubbed one hand over the other. "A man stopped me outside the service entrance. He knew my name and knew what was in the flower box. He said Mrs. Morgan's plan had changed." "Describe him," Wolfe said. "Broad shoulders, grey overcoat, hat low. He kept his face turned away." "You recognized him?" "No." Wolfe's brows rose a fraction. Pike surrendered. "I had seen his photograph in the newspapers. It was Richard Barnes. That brought me upright." "What did Barnes want?" I asked. "He gave me $50 and told me to leave the flower box in the service passage. He said he would place the coat himself." "Why did you lie to Saul?" "Mr. Barnes said he would have me arrested for burglary if I talked. I already had the $50, and Miss Morgan had hired me to enter the house under a false name," Wolfe said. "Did Mr. Barnes explain how he knew of the delivery?" "No. He knew everything. The coat, the tokens, and the papers hidden in the lining." "What papers?" "Copies of warehouse accounts. Mrs. Morgan showed me the packet before putting it in the pocket." "Did Barnes take the flower box?" "Yes. He entered through the service door after the footman went for scissors." That corrected the earlier account without improving Barnes's position. Owen Pike had delivered the box, but Barnes had removed the coat and arranged it on the chair. "Did you see him leave?" I asked. "No, I went out through the kitchen." Wolfe asked one final question. "What time did Mr. Barnes stop you?" "About 5:50. According to his official statement, Barnes had first arrived at the Whitmore house at 6:53. He had misplaced an hour. After Pike left under Saul's supervision, Wolfe poured beer and watched the foam settle. Barnes learned of Dale's warning plan, I said. He intercepted the coat, placed it in the library, and removed the packet. Not immediately, Wolfe replied. Why not? The document pocket was cut after the lining had been pressed against the chair. The laboratory found varnish from the chair inside the cut. I stared at him. You did not mention that. It became relevant only when we knew who arranged the garment. So Barnes shaped the coat on the chair first. Later he returned and cut out the packet. During the gathering, when attention had fixed upon Mr. Price, the telephone rang. It was Kramer, calling from Whitmore Consolidated. His men had opened a private records room used by Richard Barnes. Inside they found incorporation books, bank statements, and carbon copies connecting Barnes with the shell businesses. I told Wolfe, and he instructed Kramer to bring the records. Kramer arrived at noon with pearly stebbins and 2 heavy folders. His expression indicated that he had discovered a fact and resented Wolfe for expecting it. Graydon Services, Mercantile Advisory, and East Lane Holdings were Barnes's companies, he said. Price's clerk and brother-in-law were paper owners, but Barnes controlled the accounts. How? I asked. Kramer opened the first folder. Barnes had used forms prepared in Price's office for legitimate Whitmore companies. He copied signatures, substituted incorporation pages, and paid Price occasional consulting fees so that the attorney's name would appear in the records. Price accepted the fees? I asked. He reviewed contracts for Graydon and asked no questions. Wolfe grunted. Dishonest enough to be useful, not bold enough to be the architect. Peter Lawson's authorization code had also been used. Barnes received weekly financial summaries containing the code because he supervised the shipping accounts. Lawson had concealed that fact because admitting it would reveal gross negligence. Kramer dropped another report on the desk. Barnes stole $912,000. Not missing funds, Wolfe said. Stolen funds. Fine. Stolen. How did Whitmore discover it? Arthur Dale copied the warehouse ledgers. Then Lawson found duplicate storage payments. Whitmore connected them 3 weeks ago. And informed Barnes? Kramer nodded. Miriam Blake had confirmed that Whitmore telephoned Barnes at 4:30 on the afternoon of the dinner. Whitmore told him the audit was complete and demanded that he attend the board meeting on Friday. What did Barnes say? I asked. That he would explain everything. Wolfe leaned back. He came to explain before dinner. Kramer looked at him. Nobody saw him. The private study entrance. The Whitmore study opened not only into the library, but also onto a narrow enclosed passage leading to the rear garden and garage. Barnes had used it often during his partnership with Whitmore. He possessed a key. Purley supplied the next fact. A garage attendant across the street had seen Barnes's car in the rear lane shortly after 5. Barnes left it there for 20 minutes, then drove away. He returned openly for dinner more than an hour later. He entered the study before the gathering, I said. Yes, Wolfe replied. The coat and the poison were both arranged before the guests arrived. Kramer took out his cigar, but did not light it. We know he handled the coat. We know he stole the money. We still need the poison. Saul had been waiting for that. He placed a receipt on Wolfe's desk. 2 weeks before Whitmore's death, a chemical supplier had sold a small quantity of aconite extract to Harbor Pest Control. Harbor Pest Control was another shell company operated from a warehouse controlled by Barnes. The order had been signed by Barnes's private secretary. Kramer read the receipt. That will help. It establishes access, Wolfe said, not administration. Kramer's face darkened. Do you want him to autograph the poison? No. I want the act reconstructed without gaps. Wolfe instructed me to telephone Peter Nash, the valet. Nash arrived at 1:10. He stood before Wolfe's desk with the offended dignity of a servant whose employer had died without arranging the household afterward. Wolfe asked about the private brandy glass. You placed it on the silver tray shortly before 5? Yes. Miss Blake later found it missing, so I understand. When did it return? Nash hesitated. I saw it in the cabinet at 6:20. Who had entered the study? Mr. Whitmore, Miss Blake, Mr. Lawson, Mr. Price, and Richard Barnes. Nash looked startled. Mr. Barnes did not arrive until dinner. That is false. He used the rear entrance at approximately 5. Nash's face altered. You knew, I said. I heard voices in the study while assisting Mr. Whitmore upstairs. I thought Mr. Barnes had come privately. Why did you conceal it? Mr. Whitmore often received business associates without having them announced. Did you see Barnes leave? Yes, at 5:25. Was he carrying anything? A small brown bottle. Kramer stepped forward. What kind of bottle? Medicine, perhaps. It fitted in his hand. The concentrated poison had been carried in a small bottle. Barnes used it to coat the inside of Whitmore's marked brandy glass, then returned the glass to the cabinet. The remaining brandy in the decanter stayed clean because Barnes wanted only Whitmore to drink the poison. Did Barnes touch the coat? Wolfe asked. I saw him carrying the florist's box through the service passage shortly before 6. That gave us both operations. Barnes entered once through the private study door to prepare the glass. He returned near the service entrance after intercepting Pike, carried the false fla box inside, and draped Price's coat over the green chair. He came twice before dinner, after Nash left. Planning often requires repetition, Wolfe replied. Kramer paced to the bookshelves and back. Barnes knew Whitmore had discovered the fraud. He knew Dale and Clara planned to deliver Price's coat with evidence inside, so he used their plan, yes. He put the coat on the chair to frame Price. More subtly, Wolfe said. He allowed Price to frame himself. Price recognized his stolen garment, but remained silent because he feared the financial packet inside it. The other guests saw the coat and associated it with him. When Price left the library, the garment continued to mark his supposed presence. Barnes later encouraged the false memories. He told Lawson that Price had stood near the chair during the telephone call. Lawson repeated it because he feared his own negligence. Ellen Whitmore and Clara Morgan remembered the shape of the coat rather than Price's face. Barnes transformed an object into an alibi for himself and an accusation against another man, Kramer said. Why did Barnes remove the packet from the coat if it accused him? Because that was its original purpose, Wolfe replied. Dale's copied ledgers identified Barnes's warehouse companies. Barnes cut the pocket during the confusion, after Whitmore reacted to token 27. When, at approximately 9:15, Dale appeared at the front door, Whitmore ordered him sent away. Everyone's attention moved toward the hall. Barnes had the opportunity to approach the chair and remove the packet. What about the blue folder in the study? He removed it later, while Mr. Price was using the telephone, and the coat persuaded everyone that Price remained near the library door. I said, that is why Barnes needed the false witness. Precisely. He entered the study, took Whitmore's folder, and returned before anyone noticed his absence. Later he claimed Price had been present throughout that period. Kramer stopped pacing, and the note under Whitmore's hand. The empty chair has been filled. Wolfe's lips tightened. Barnes wrote it. Handwriting? Disguised. But the sentence reveals its author's purpose. The chair had been filled not by a guest, but by suspicion. Barnes placed the note after Whitmore collapsed, intending the police to connect the coat with the death. How did he get into the study after dinner? He never left the house when he claimed. The front door record shows him departing at 10:50, but the chauffeur's passage leads back to the rear garden. He re-entered with his key after the household retired. Kramer shook his head. The doorman saw him take a taxi. He saw Barnes enter a taxi. Saul opened his notebook. The driver remembered taking Barnes only 3 blocks. Barnes left the taxi, walked through an alley, and returned to the rear of the Whitmore property. At 11:20, the garage attendant saw a man of Barnes's build enter the lane on foot. Barnes returned to make sure the blue folder and packet were gone. He found Whitmore already weakening. He placed the note beneath his hand, searched the desk, and left through the study passage. The poison acted slowly. Whitmore survived for several hours, poured water when he felt ill, and finally died behind his desk. Kramer's cigar had gone unlit for nearly 10 minutes. Why did Barnes steal Clara's photograph? He asked. Because the uncropped original connected him to the Trident investigation indirectly. Whitmore's note, Price was there too, could be read as evidence against Price. Barnes wanted the photograph found without the surrounding circumstances, but feared Clara might explain that he had been watching Dale and knew of the storage cabinets. So Barnes stole the copy, but missed the negative. Yes. Kramer looked at the financial folders. I can arrest him for theft now. Do not. That got a reaction. Kramer planted both hands on Wolfe's desk. You have a habit of saying that when I finally have a man, you have him for financial crimes. If arrested, he will deny the murder and retain counsel. We require proof that he poisoned the glass and returned to the study. Nash saw the bottle. A brown bottle. Mr. Barnes will call it medicine. The supplier records connect him to aconite through a company. He will blame an employee. The rear lane witness places him there, near the house, not inside the study. Kramer straightened. What do you suggest? Wolfe looked at the clock. It was 10 minutes before 2. His afternoon orchid session began at 4 and was not to be treated lightly. Mr. Barnes believes the packet taken from the coat and the blue folder taken from the study have both been destroyed. Were they? The packet was recovered from his records room. Kramer shook his head. No. Then tell him Arthur Dale retained an original page bearing Barnes's written instruction to purchase the poison. There is no such page. Mr. Barnes does not know that. I said you want him here. I want everyone here, Mr. Barnes, Mr. Price, Mr. Lawson, Miss Morgan, Mrs. Whitmore, Miss Blake, Mr. Dale, Mr. Nash, and Owen Pike. Kramer stared at him. Tonight at 9. That gives Barnes 7 hours to run. He will not run. He has spent years presenting himself as the injured partner. Flight would destroy the identity he values most. His reputation, his superiority. Kramer gathered the folders. I will have men outside. Discreetly. Kramer grunted and left with Pearlie. Saul departed to bring Arthur Dale from Hoboken. I began telephoning the others. Richard Barnes answered personally. Mr. Wolfe has recovered the original page head from the packet hidden in Samuel Price's coat, I told him. It identifies the person who ordered the aconite. There was silence. Then Barnes said, that is impossible. Mr. Wolfe says 9 o'clock. Why should I come? Because Price is coming, and he intends to accuse you. Barnes's breathing changed. I'll be there, he hung up. I looked at Wolfe. You were right, that is not news. He knew what could not be in the packet. Yes. Will that be enough? No. But fear is an industrious assistant. At 4, Wolfe went upstairs to the orchids. Murder, financial theft, and an approaching confrontation were expected to wait until 6. I remained in the office with Richard Barnes's financial records spread across the long table. The pattern was clear now. Barnes had stolen Whitmore's money. When Whitmore discovered it, Barnes prepared the marked glass before dinner. Then he learned that Arthur Dale and Clara Morgan intended to send evidence hidden in Price's stolen coat. Barnes did not stop them. He improved their plan. He placed the coat where every guest would see it, removed the documents that named him, and encouraged witnesses to remember Samuel Price whenever they looked toward the empty chair. The coat had never been forgotten. It had been planted to remember the wrong man. Chapter 8. Wolfe reveals the truth at 8:55 that evening. Wolfe's office contained 1 murderer, several liars, 2 victims of blackmail, 1 honest man with a criminal talent for secrecy, and Inspector Kramer. The arrangement was crowded but orderly. Richard Barnes occupied the red leather chair. He sat with his legs crossed and his broad hands resting calmly on his knees. His suit was dark, his silver hair was perfect, and his expression suggested he had come to witness someone else's humiliation. Samuel Price sat near the bookshelves, looking dry and severe. Peter Lawson had chosen a chair near the globe, where he could avoid Price's eyes. Clara Morgan sat beside Arthur Dale. Dale's injured right arm was still bandaged beneath his sleeve. Ellen Whitmore and Miriam Blake occupied chairs near my desk. Peter Nash, the valet, stood near the door with Owen Pike, the false florist. Saul Panzer waited by the long table, where copies of the financial records had been arranged in neat piles. Inspector Kramer stood beside Wolfe's desk. Pearlie Stebbins remained in the hall. The dark coat hung over the back of the green leather chair we had brought from the Whitmore library. It looked exactly as it had on the night of the dinner. The shoulders had been shaped to suggest a seated man. The brass token numbered 27 showed from one pocket. The coat seemed almost to be listening. At 9 exactly, Wolfe entered from the hall and crossed to his chair. He settled himself, adjusted the edge of his vest, and looked at the company. Goodwin, he said, Is everyone present? Everyone who has lied to us, except the dead man. Barnes looked at me. Is that supposed to be amusing? It was not intended for you. Wolfe lifted one finger. We shall have enough noise without assistance. Mr. Barnes, you were told that an original document had been recovered from the packet, carried in Mr. Price's coat. Yes, that statement was false. Barnes smiled. I expected as much. No, Wolfe said. You hoped as much. Expectation and hope are often confused by frightened men. Barnes's smile disappeared. Kramer shifted his cigar but said nothing. Wolfe placed his hands on the arms of his chair. Harold Whitmore died because poison had been applied to the inside of his personal brandy glass before dinner. When he later poured brandy into it, the coating dissolved. The combination of a sedative and aconite allowed him to remain alive for several hours. His final collapse therefore occurred long after the lethal act. Samuel Price said, "That has already been established." Yes, but its importance has not. Wolfe turned his head toward him. The timing excludes much of the activity that distracted the police. Mr. Whitmore was not poisoned during an argument in the library, while reviewing documents, or after his guests departed. The murder was prepared before the gathering began. He looked around the room. The coat was also placed before the gathering. Clara Morgan tightened her fingers around her handbag. Wolfe continued. Miss Morgan and Mr. Dale arranged to send Samuel Price's stolen coat to Harold Whitmore. Mr. Dale had discovered false warehouse transactions and believed Mr. Whitmore had dismissed him on fabricated evidence. He placed copies of financial records in the coat's concealed document pocket. He also inserted 2 Trident exchange tokens. Dale said number 27 belonged to Mr. Whitmore's family cabinet. 31 was mine, yes. The visible token told Whitmore where the original records could be found. The concealed token identified the source of the warning. Clara said, I hired Owen Pike to deliver the coat. You did. Your purpose was not murder. It was to force Mr. Whitmore to acknowledge Mr. Dale and examine his evidence. Barnes spoke from the red chair. Then the coat has nothing to do with me. Wolfe regarded him. On the contrary, its original purpose had nothing to do with you. Its final purpose was entirely yours. Barnes uncrossed his legs. Wolfe turned to Owen Pike. You were stopped outside the service entrance. Yes, sir. By whom? Pike looked at Barnes. Mr. Barnes. Barnes gave a short laugh. This man entered the house under a false name. His word is worthless. Alone, perhaps, Wolfe said. It is not alone. He nodded to Saul. Saul placed a statement on the table. The garage attendant saw your car in the rear lane at 5:12, Wolfe said. You claimed you did not arrive until 6:53. A shopkeeper on the corner saw you speak with Mr. Pike beside the service entrance shortly before 6. Peter Nash saw you carrying the florist's box through the service passage. Nash said, I thought Mr. Barnes had been admitted privately. Barnes looked at him with contempt. You remembered that only after Wolfe told you what to remember. No, Nash replied. I concealed it because Mr. Whitmore often received Mr. Barnes without announcement. Wolfe said, Mr. Barnes entered the house twice before dinner. On the first visit, he used the private passage leading to the study. He removed Mr. Whitmore's marked glass, coated it with poison, and returned it to the drinks cabinet. Barnes leaned forward. You cannot prove that. The poison was purchased through Harbor Pest Control, a shell business you controlled. Your private secretary signed the order. Peter Nash saw you leave the study carrying a small brown bottle, a bottle of medicine. Then identify the medicine. Barnes did not answer. Wolfe continued. Your second visit concerned the coat. You had learned of Mr. Dale's plan. You intercepted Mr. Pike, took the flower box and placed the coat on the green chair near the library door. Why would I place evidence against myself in Whitmore's house? You did not. You placed evidence against Samuel Price. Price's head turned sharply toward Barnes. Wolfe pointed at the coat. It belonged to Mr. Price. It had been custom-made for him, though its visible label had been removed. Its shape, collar, and sleeves identified it once the hidden tailor's order number was found. You knew that eventual identification would direct suspicion toward him. Price said, Barnes knew Dale had stolen it. Indeed, Mr. Dale visited your office. Barnes learned of that meeting through Peter Lawson's reports and through his own observation of the Trident investigation. Lawson looked up. I did not report to Barnes. You provided him with financial summaries, authorization codes, and access records. Whether through negligence or fear, you gave him enough. Lawson's face went grey. Wolfe shifted his attention back to Barnes. You arranged the coat carefully. You pressed it against the chair so that, from across the room, it resembled the back and shoulders of a seated man. Its position was not decorative, it was functional. Barnes said nothing. The coat became a false witness. During the evening, the guests repeatedly associated it with Mr. Price. Whitmore saw the dark shoulders and assumed he stood near the door. Miss Morgan formed the same impression. Mr. Lawson later said Mr. Price remained in the library, though telephone records proved he was absent for 15 minutes. Ellen Whitmore said softly, I never saw Samuel's face. You saw his coat. Price looked at the garment as if it had insulted him personally. Wolfe continued. Mr. Barnes understood that memory is lazy. A familiar object may replace a person if the observer has no reason to question the substitution. Whenever Mr. Price left the room, the coat remained. Later, witnesses remembered the owner where only his garment had been. Kramer said that gave Barnes freedom to move. Yes, at 9:12, Mr. Price went to telephone his office. Miss Morgan and Mrs. Whitmore had entered the drawing room. Mr. Lawson was occupied near the dining room passage. Mr. Barnes left the library, entered the study, and removed the blue folder containing Mr. Dale's accusation and the preliminary audit. Barnes shook his head. No one saw me leave. That was the purpose of the coat. Everyone remembered Mr. Price and no one watched you. Wolfe indicated the coat's cut lining. When Mr. Dale appeared at the front door, at 9:15, the company's attention shifted toward the hall. Mr. Barnes then approached the chair and cut open the concealed document pocket. He removed the packet of copied warehouse records. Dale looked at Barnes. You framed me for theft and then stole my proof. Barnes did not turn toward him. Wolfe said, the blood in the cuff was Mr. Dale's. The tokens belonged to the Trident cabinets. Those genuine facts made the coat persuasive. Mr. Barnes did not invent the warning. He stole it and altered its meaning, Clara Morgan said. Harold recognized the token. Yes, when he saw number 27, he said, not here. He understood that Mr. Dale had sent evidence concerning the family storage records. He ordered the coat left untouched because he did not know who had arranged its delivery or who among his guests could be trusted. Why did he refuse to admit Dale? Ellen asked. Because he feared a public confrontation before examining the documents. He intended to speak with him later. Wolfe picked up a copy of Whitmore's private notebook. Miss Whitmore had already discovered missing funds. Mr. Dale's records revealed false warehouse charges. Mr. Lawson's reports exposed duplicate payments. The final trail led not to Samuel Price, but to Richard Barnes. Saul moved the financial papers closer to the edge of the table. Wolfe said, Graydon Services, Mercantile Advisory, East Lane Holdings, and Harbor Pest Control were controlled by Mr. Barnes through clerks, nominees, and relatives of other men. He used forms prepared by Mr. Price's office and authorization codes available through Mr. Lawson. He paid Mr. Price consulting fees, ensuring that the attorney's name would appear in the transactions. Price said bitterly, You paid me to make me look guilty. Barnes finally looked at him. You accepted the money. That may establish greed, Wolfe said. It does not establish murder. Price flushed but remained silent. Mr. Barnes diverted more than $900,000. Wolfe continued. Mr. Whitmore discovered the theft and planned to expose it at the Friday board meeting. At 4:30 on the afternoon of the dinner, he telephoned Mr. Barnes and told him the audit was complete. Miriam Blake said, I heard Mr. Whitmore say restitution would not prevent prosecution. Wolfe nodded. That ended Mr. Barnes' hope of settlement. He chose murder. Barnes stood. This is an impressive performance, Wolfe. But it is still a performance. You have no witness who saw me poison the glass. Kramer moved slightly, but Wolfe raised a hand. Sit down. Barnes remained standing. Wolfe's voice hardened. You came because Mr. Goodwin told you an original page had been recovered from the coat. You replied that it was impossible. So, an innocent man could call it unlikely, false, or absurd. You called it impossible because you removed the packet yourself and destroyed every page. Barnes stared at him. That proves only that I knew the packet was missing. No, you knew its contents could not survive. Wolfe nodded to Saul. Saul took a sheet from one of the folders. This is not the invented page, Wolfe said. It is a genuine carbon copy found in a locked file in your own records room. It authorizes payments to East Lane Holdings and bears your initials. Barnes did not look at it, Kramer said. Your handwriting expert matched the initials this afternoon. Barnes's jaw tightened. Wolfe continued. After the guests left, you staged the final evidence. You took a taxi 3 blocks, left it, and returned through the rear passage. Harold Whitmore was already ill. You found him in the study, searched for any remaining documents, and placed a note beneath his hand. I picked up the photograph of the note and read it aloud. The chair has been filled, Wolfe said. The sentence was not written by Whitmore. It was your explanation of the frame you had created. You believed the empty chair had been filled by Samuel Price's guilt. Barnes laughed, but there was no pleasure in it. You cannot match that writing to mine. No, you used block letters. But only the person who had shaped the coat over the chair would describe it that way. That is deduction, not proof. Then consider the red wax. Samuel Price's eyes moved toward Wolfe. The wax found beneath the chair came from Mr. Price's document case, Wolfe said. Mr. Barstow took a piece during his early visit and pressed it beneath the chair. It was another intended connection to the attorney. But Mr. Price's case did not enter the house until after the coat had already been placed. Barnes's face changed. It was small, but everyone saw it. Wolfe's voice became quieter. You made an error in timing. You wanted the wax to prove Mr. Price had prepared the coat. Instead, it proved someone with advanced knowledge had stolen wax from his office or possessions before dinner. Price said, Barnes visited my office the morning before the dinner. Barnes turned toward him. You never told the police that. I had no reason until now. You asked to inspect the partnership agreements. My document case was open on the table. Wolfe nodded. Mr. Price's delay in revealing facts has been irritating, but it is not fatal. Yours is. Kramer removed his cigar. Barnes, sit down. Barnes looked at the door. Pearlie Stebbins had entered the office and stood in front of it. Barnes remained still for several seconds. Then he lowered himself into the red leather chair. Wolfe waited. That was the hardest part for Barnes. Silence requires a man to hear himself. Finally he said, Harold was going to destroy everything. Kramer said, Everything you stole? Barnes looked at the financial records on the table. It began with one account. The shipping division was losing money. I moved funds to cover it. Then Harold cut my authority and left me responsible for the losses. I created the companies to move money where I needed it. You took it for yourself, Kramer said. Some of it. $900,000 is some. Barnes ignored him. When Dale found the warehouse records, I had to discredit him. Harold believed me at first. Then Lawson discovered the duplicate charges. Price began asking questions. Harold enjoyed making men crawl. So you poisoned him, Wolfe said. Barnes closed his eyes. I went through the study passage at 5. His glass was on the tray. I coated it and put it back. The coat? Kramer asked. I heard Clara arranging the delivery with Pike. I followed him. When I saw Price's coat, I understood what it could do. You removed Dale's papers during the party? Yes. And the blue folder? Yes. You returned after leaving? Yes. Did Whitmore see you? He was barely conscious. He tried to stand, but he could not. Barnes's voice had flattened. I searched the desk. I found the notebook, but not the hidden pages. I left the note because I wanted Price to understand why he had been chosen. Price looked at him with disgust. You expected me to hang for it. I expected you to hire good counsel. Kramer took handcuffs from his coat. That can be arranged. Barnes did not resist when Pearlie fastened them. He looked once at Wolfe. The coat would have worked if Goodwin had not found the tailor's mark. No, Wolfe said. That merely named its owner. Your failure began when you used an object to manufacture human memory. Objects remain available for examination. Memory does not. Kramer told Pearlie to take Barnes out. Before following, he looked at Wolfe. You could have told me yesterday. You would have arrested Mr. Price. I might have. You certainly would have. Kramer glanced at the coat. I still dislike it. That is reasonable. Kramer left. The others departed more slowly. Peter Lawson agreed to provide a full statement about the financial authorizations. Samuel Price promised cooperation with the recovery of the missing funds, though his expression suggested he expected to charge for it. Arthur Dale stood before Wolfe's desk and asked whether his name would be cleared. The planted cash and Mr. Barnes's confession should accomplish that, Wolfe said. Clara Morgan thanked him. Ellen Whitmore said nothing, but before leaving, she touched Dale's good arm. Miriam Blake was the last of the Whitmore party to go. She looked at the empty chair. Harold noticed the coat immediately, she said. Yes. He knew it meant danger. He knew it meant evidence. The danger was already in his glass. When the door closed behind her, Fritz entered with a tray containing beer for Wolfe and coffee for me. He looked at the coat with disapproval. Must that remain here, he asked. No, Wolfe said. Mr. Kramer will collect it. Fritz withdrew. I sat at my desk and looked at the coat. Without the crowd, it had lost much of its power. It was only dark wool, black silk, and a shape that people had mistaken for a man. All that because Barnes thought a coat could testify. Wolfe poured beer. It did testify, against Price, at first, and then against Barnes, because he asked it to say too much. I leaned back. The chair was empty, but everyone remembered someone sitting there. Wolfe raised his glass. People frequently see what has been prepared for them, Archie. The difficulty for a murderer is that preparation leaves marks. He drank. The coat remained on the chair until Kramer's man came for it 20 minutes later. When it was lifted away, the green leather seat beneath it was empty again. This time, no one mistook it for anything else.